Abnormal DNA from this 2,000-year-old mummy revealed a world-shocking secret. Hello, and welcome to the Ancient History Channel, my friend. Did you know? The world of archaeology is not just about old bones or crumbling ruins. Sometimes, it tells stories that make us question the very history we once believed to be true. Just think about it. What would happen if a mummy revealed secrets about strange and mysterious rituals? Or if an ancient tomb contained an incredibly detailed family lineage that no one ever expected? And even more unsettling are discoveries suggesting that ancient humans once endured brutal periods far beyond anything we can imagine today. Perhaps what makes these discoveries so extraordinary is not just their historical value, but the mysteries that remain unsolved. There are artifacts that have lain undisturbed for thousands of years, yet no one truly understands their purpose. There are traces suggesting that ancient technologies may have been far more advanced than we once thought, and there are findings that have sparked debates among scientists for decades, without any final conclusion. The deeper we explore, the more we realize that the past is far more complex than what history books have recorded. And perhaps the most terrifying part is not what has already been discovered, but the secrets still buried beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered. So, are you curious to find out what remarkable discoveries archaeologists have made over the years, and what stories and secrets lie behind them? If so, join me in today's video right now. A perfectly preserved bog man reveals a terrifying sacrificial ritual from 2,000 years ago. You know, in the middle of a cold, desolate bog, where thick layers of peat and dark, stagnant water have sat undisturbed for thousands of years, there lies a human body. Not decayed, not dissolved, but astonishingly intact, as if the man had only just died. It's the kind of discovery that sends a chill down anyone's spine just hearing about it. That body belonged to a man found at Lindo Moss, near Wilmslow, Cheshire, England. At first, when he was discovered, people assumed it was just an ordinary set of human remains buried in the bog. But the more archaeologists excavated and scientists analyzed, the more they realized they were facing something far beyond the ordinary. This man, later known as Lindo Man, had been lying in the peat for nearly 2,000 years. Yet his skin, his hair, even his facial features were preserved in remarkable detail. Thanks to this near-perfect preservation, scientists were able not only to determine his age and physical condition, but also to reconstruct the final moments of his life. Lindo Man is believed to have been a healthy young adult, likely in his mid to late 20s. His body showed no signs of heavy physical labor, suggesting he may have belonged to a higher social class at the time. That immediately raised a haunting question. Why would someone like him end up dead in a bog? The answer began to emerge as researchers took a closer look at the injuries on his body. His head had been struck with force. There were marks around his neck indicating strangulation. His ribs and chest showed signs of severe blunt trauma, and there were even traces of cuts. All of this pointed to one chilling conclusion. This was no ordinary death. It appeared to be a deliberate sequence of actions, something ritualistic, carried out with brutal precision. But perhaps the most unsettling discovery wasn't the violence itself, it was what they found inside his stomach. During examination, scientists discovered a piece of partially burned bread that had not yet been fully digested. At first glance, that might seem like an insignificant detail, but in ancient Celtic culture, it could mean everything. According to scholars such as Anne Ross and Don Robbins, in certain sacrificial rituals, victims were chosen through a form of lottery involving pieces of bread. Whoever ended up with the burnt piece would become the sacrifice. Think about that for a moment. It's possible that in his final moments, Lindo Man already knew his fate, holding that fateful piece of bread in his hand. And it doesn't stop there. The injuries on his body suggest he may not have been killed just once, but subjected to what is known as a triple death, a specific form of ritual sacrifice in Celtic belief. Beaten, strangled, and then cut, each act carried out as part of a symbolic offering to the gods. So what were they asking for? One chilling theory suggests that Lindo Man may have been sacrificed to appeal to 3 Celtic deities, at a time when Celtic tribes were facing the looming threat of invasion by the Roman Empire around 60 AD. In moments when war draws near, faith and fear can intertwine in ways that drive people to do things we can barely comprehend today. And so, this young man, who may once have lived a privileged life, respected and secure, became a sacrificial offering in a terrifying ritual. His body cast into the cold bog, as a message to the divine. Even to this day, the mystery of how his body remained so perfectly preserved is not fully understood. But perhaps the most haunting part of all is not how he died. It's the possibility that his death was sealed the very moment he picked that burnt piece of bread. The ancient world was truly a frightening place, wasn't it? So let me ask you this. If you had the chance to travel back in time, would you dare to go? DNA from a 2,000-year-old mummy reveals a deadly virus. Hey, have you ever heard of lice? Now, have you ever imagined that something as tiny and unpleasant as lice could carry the secrets of an entire ancient civilization? It sounds unbelievable, but those microscopic creatures are helping scientists uncover a chilling story, one that begins on the scalps of 2,000-year-old mummies. It all started when researchers analyzed DNA from mummies dating back roughly 1,500 to 2,000 years, belonging to the Ansilta culture in the San Juan region of western Argentina. At first, their goal was simple: to learn more about the origins and lives of these ancient people. But the deeper they dug, the more they realized that what they were uncovering was not just history, it was evidence of a mysterious epidemic. What makes this discovery especially fascinating is the method. Instead of extracting DNA from bones or teeth, as is traditionally done, scientists focused on lice eggs attached to strands of hair. Yes, you heard that right. When lice lay eggs, they secrete a kind of biological glue that firmly attaches the eggs to the hair. Over time, this glue becomes a remarkably effective storage medium, preserving human skin cells for thousands of years. Thanks to modern DNA sequencing technology, researchers were able not only to determine the sex of the mummies, but also to trace their migration patterns, from the distant Amazon rainforest to the harsh Andes mountains. It almost feels like a journey through time, doesn't it? But the story doesn't end there. As scientists dug deeper, they uncovered something far more unsettling. Within the DNA samples taken from the cement of lice eggs, they found traces of a virus known as Merkel cell polyomavirus, a virus associated with a rare but aggressive form of skin cancer. Yes, you heard that correctly. 2,000 years ago, long before humans had any understanding of bacteria or viruses, a dangerous pathogen like this was already present on their scalps. Even more concerning, researchers believe that lice may have acted as carriers, helping to spread this virus within ancient communities. So what makes this truly frightening? It's not just the virus itself, but the way it silently existed, hidden within something so small, going completely unnoticed until thousands of years later. And there's more. The position of the lice eggs on the hair revealed yet another chilling detail. Scientists found that the eggs were located extremely close to the scalp, a sign that the host had been living in extremely cold conditions before death. This detail acts like a final puzzle piece, suggesting just how harsh and unforgiving the environment may have been in the final days of these individuals' lives. From things that seem utterly insignificant, a louse, a microscopic egg, an entire historical picture begins to emerge. Migration routes, living conditions, diseases, and even the invisible threats these people once faced. Researchers have also noted that the DNA extracted from the glue of lice eggs is not only abundant, but often of higher quality than DNA obtained from bones or teeth. This opens up an entirely new direction in scientific research, less invasive, yet far more informative than ever before. Hearing all of this, you might start looking at the smallest things around you a little differently, right? Because sometimes, the greatest secrets of history aren't hidden inside massive pyramids or grand tombs, but in the things we tend to overlook, like a tiny louse clinging to the hair of someone who lived thousands of years ago. Fascinating and just a little terrifying, isn't it? DNA from skeletal remains in an ancient tomb in England reveals the family tree of one of humanity's oldest lineages. What would you think if I told you that nearly 6,000 years ago, when humans were still living in the Stone Age, with no writing and no recorded history, today using only the DNA preserved in bones and teeth, scientists have been able to reconstruct an entire, detailed family tree of an ancient lineage? It may sound unbelievable, right? But that is exactly what has been revealed from a massive ancient tomb in England. This tomb is anything but ordinary. Located in the Cotswold Severn region, it has a distinctive L-shaped structure and contains the remains of up to 35 individuals buried around 5,700 years ago. At first, it was thought to be nothing more than a communal burial site, but as deeper analysis was conducted, things gradually became more unusual. And soon, a multi-generational family story began to emerge with astonishing clarity. Specifically, scientists from several major universities, including Newcastle, the Basque Country, Vienna, and Harvard, worked together to analyze DNA from the bones and teeth of the remains. The results even surprised them. At least 27 out of the 35 individuals were biologically related. In other words, this was not a random group of people, but an entire lineage buried together across multiple generations. And the most fascinating detail lies at the top of this family tree. All 27 individuals could be traced back to a single man, the patriarch of the lineage, and his 4 wives. From there, successive generations followed, forming a family structure far more complex than what we once imagined about Stone Age societies. But the story doesn't end there. When researchers examined the burial arrangement more closely, they noticed something rather unusual. Male and female remains were placed in separate areas within the tomb. Most of the space was reserved for males, who were typically buried alongside their brothers. Meanwhile, the area for females was significantly smaller, and notably, there were very few female remains from later generations. That sounds unusual, doesn't it? But the explanation is remarkably logical. According to scientists, women at that time, once married, would be buried with their husband's family after death. This means that only unmarried daughters, often those who died young, would be buried in their parents' tomb. And indeed, in the female section, 2 juvenile remains were discovered. So what about those who were not biologically related? Among the 8 outsiders, 3 were women believed to have married into the family. It's possible that they had no children or only daughters, who later married and were buried elsewhere. Sound familiar? It's a family pattern that, upon closer look, resembles many later cultures. In fact, this tomb reveals something even more surprising. Their concept of family was not as primitive as we might assume. There is evidence that children who were not biologically related to the male head of the family, possibly stepchildren, were still accepted, raised, and buried as full members of the lineage. This suggests a socially cohesive and flexible understanding of family that is far from simple. Dr. Chris Fowler from Newcastle University even stated that this discovery offers an unprecedented perspective on family structures during the Neolithic period. More importantly, this is the oldest family tree ever reconstructed using DNA analysis. You see, from bones that have lain silent for thousands of years, modern humans are now able to hear stories about kinship, marriage, and the social rules of our ancestors. Perhaps the most astonishing thing is not the technology, but the realization that, despite being separated by thousands of years, ancient humans and we today share more similarities than we ever expected. So, do you see what I'm seeing? Or do you have a different perspective on this? Don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Let's discuss it together. 60 mummies sealed. Inside a rocky mountain reveal a blood-soaked secret buried for 4,000 years. Just imagine this. One day, you step into an ancient cliff in Egypt. In front of you is a pitch-dark entrance leading down into a long, winding labyrinth beneath the earth. And as you venture deeper inside, what appears before you is not treasure, nor statues of gods, but dozens of mummies piled on top of one another, all bearing horrific wounds. How do you think you would feel in that moment? Just hearing it is enough to send chills down your spine, right? Well, I bet you'll feel even more unsettled when you hear the story I'm about to tell, about these 60 mummies in Egypt. This story begins more than 4,000 years ago, in a region near Luxor, once the center of power in ancient Egypt. There, archaeologists discovered a very unusual tomb at Deir el-Bahari, located on the west bank of the Nile River. What makes this tomb so strange is that it is unlike any other burial site from that period. Instead of being buried individually with formal rituals, dozens of bodies here were placed together in a single space, as if they had been sealed together forever. In fact, this tomb was first discovered in 1923, but it was quickly sealed shut afterward. It wasn't until recently, when scientists returned to study it, that a terrifying truth began to emerge. Inside lies a complex tunnel system about 200 feet long, cutting deep into the rock like a maze. And at the end of these tunnels is a chamber filled with mummies. All of them are men, and their deaths were anything but natural. Upon close examination, researchers found clear signs of extreme violence, shattered skulls, puncture wounds, and even arrows still lodged in their bodies. Some mummies show evidence of being attacked with sharp weapons in close combat. One individual was even found wearing a specialized glove, the kind typically used by archers. This suggests that these were not ordinary civilians, but real warriors. So just think, what could have happened to cause around 60 men to die at the same time under such horrific circumstances? The answer lies in the very period they lived in. Around 2150 BC, Egypt entered one of its darkest eras, a time when central authority weakened, society fell into chaos, and civil wars began to erupt. What was once a powerful empire became fractured as local factions fought for control. However, evidence from the tomb of Pharaoh Pepi II, a king who ruled for nearly 90 years, reveals a disturbing paradox. His tomb was built on a grand scale, indicating that the early part of his reign was still prosperous. But after his death, the tomb was looted. And in ancient Egyptian culture, that was an act of extreme disrespect, something that was almost unthinkable unless society had completely lost control. War was not the only factor pushing society to the brink. Famine also played a devastating role. Prolonged droughts led to failed harvests and severe food shortages. Some ancient texts even describe horrifying scenes that are hard to believe. People, driven by starvation, turned to killing and even cannibalizing one another. At this point, you can probably begin to understand why those 60 mummies were found together in a single tomb. They were not only victims of war, but also the result of a collapsing society, one where people were pushed to their limits, forced to fight and kill just to survive. Archaeologist Salima Ikram, who directly studied the mummies, even remarked, "They died in an incredibly horrific way." And truly, every wound on their bodies is like a fragment of a larger story, one that reveals one of the darkest chapters in ancient Egyptian history. So here's a question for you. If you were the one stepping into that chamber, standing among 60 mummies marked by violent deaths, what would you feel? Fear or curiosity to uncover the secrets they have carried for thousands of years? As for me, to be honest, even though I would feel a bit afraid, I would still want to go deeper to find out what really happened. 40 mummies from a single family, buried beneath the sands of Egypt for 2,000 years. An entire extended family lay silent beneath the earth for 2,000 years, from adults to children, all buried together in deep underground chambers. That is exactly what archaeologists uncovered in Egypt, a land that never ceases to spark curiosity with its endless mysteries. The discovery took place in Minya province, located south of Cairo, Egypt. There, archaeologists found an ancient burial complex containing around 40 mummies resting inside dark underground chambers. What startled everyone was this: it was not a random burial site, but most likely the final resting place of an entire family spanning multiple generations. According to initial analysis, this extended family may have lived during the Ptolemaic period, the early Roman period, or even into the Byzantine era. In other words, they lived during a time of great historical transition, when Egypt was no longer fully independent and was influenced by multiple civilizations. But here's what makes it even more intriguing. These were not nobles or royalty, as we often see in movies about ancient Egypt. Researchers believe they were a middle-class family, ordinary people in ancient society, and yet, the way they were buried was remarkably careful and ritualistic, raising an important question. What was their life really like when they were alive? As archaeologists ventured deeper into the burial chambers, what they found was not just mummies, but an entire treasure trove of history. The coffins, painted in vibrant colors, remain astonishingly well preserved. Alongside them were pottery and papyrus, items closely tied to everyday life in ancient Egypt. Altogether, they seem to be telling a story that time itself tried to bury. And do you know what particularly caught the attention of researchers? Among the 40 mummies, at least 10 were children. Just hearing that already feels unusual, doesn't it? Why were so many children buried together in the same place? Could this be a sign of some tragic event that once affected this family? But that's not all. Some of the mummies were decorated with ancient inscriptions, what some people dramatically refer to as the handwriting of demons. It may sound frightening, but in reality, it was simply a form of ancient Egyptian script commonly used in daily life. These inscriptions could be the key to helping scientists better understand the identities, occupations, and even life stories of each individual in this family. What makes this discovery even more remarkable is its modern context. In recent years, Egypt has continuously announced new archaeological discoveries, as if layers of sand are gradually revealing secrets buried for thousands of years. And behind these efforts lies not only science and history, but also a push to revive tourism, an essential part of the country's economy. But returning to this 2,000-year-old family, have you ever wondered how they lived, what they went through, and why they all ended up resting together in this place? Was it a simple yet closely bonded life, or a tragedy that history never had the chance to record? Perhaps these are questions that still remain unanswered. But as you can see, the more we explore and analyze, the more we realize that these silent mummies are not truly dead. They are still telling their stories, just in a way that requires patience for us to truly listen. A sea monster fossil found at an elevation of 8,860 feet. What do you think you would see if you were standing on a snow-covered peak in the Alps with freezing winds blowing and nothing around you but rock and ice? It's hard to imagine, right? But for scientists, the reality was far more extraordinary. Beneath their feet, they discovered fossils of a massive sea monster, tens of feet long, that once ruled the oceans more than 200 million years ago. Yes, you heard that right. A real giant sea monster. The story began when a research team led by paleontologist Martin Sander from the University of Bonn, Germany, conducted an expedition on this mountain peak. There, they uncovered 3 remarkable fossils dating back around 205 million years, during the Triassic period, a time when Earth was filled with strange and fascinating creatures. These fossils belong to ichthyosaurs, often called fish lizards, one of the most formidable marine reptiles to have ever existed. The name alone sounds both familiar and strange, doesn't it? In reality, they were neither fish nor whales. On the outside, they resembled whales, with long snouts and streamlined bodies built for speed in the water. But on the inside, they were reptiles, distant relatives of dinosaurs. This unusual combination made them highly efficient predators in the ancient oceans. The 3 fossils were found scattered across different locations in the Alps. 2 of them included ribs and vertebrae, and based on computational models, scientists estimate that these creatures measured about 49 feet and 69 feet in length when alive. That already sounds enormous, but the 3rd specimen is what truly left everyone in awe. Only a single tooth remained. But don't underestimate it. This tooth alone measured about 6 inches in length and 2.4 inches in width. From its size, researchers inferred that the animal could have reached up to 177 feet in length, comparable to a high-rise building laid horizontally beneath the sea. For comparison, a previously described complete ichthyosaur fossil measuring 59 feet had teeth only about 0.8 inches wide. That makes this new tooth compelling evidence of a truly unprecedented giant. These sea dragons were far from gentle. They were apex predators, capable of hunting large fish, giant squid, and even other marine reptiles. The oceans of the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods were true battlegrounds, and ichthyosaurs were among the most terrifying rulers of them all. But perhaps the most intriguing question is this: why were the fossils of a marine creature found on a mountaintop? The answer lies within the Earth itself. Hundreds of millions of years ago, what is now the Alps was once the ocean floor. Over time, tectonic plates shifted, collided, and pushed these ancient seabeds upward, forming mountains. Along with them, the remains of long-buried marine creatures were lifted as well, like a natural time machine. In other words, every rock on a mountaintop today may once have rested deep beneath the ocean. And those ancient sea dragons, after 205 million years, have surfaced once again, almost as if they had never truly disappeared. A solitary tomb, as tall as a 4-story building in the desert, an unfinished masterpiece that astonishes the world. Did you know that in the middle of a barren desert, where sand-laden winds blow day and night and human footprints are rarely seen, there exists a structure so unusual that anyone who lays eyes on it is left standing in awe? It is not a pyramid nor a palace, but a massive tomb carved directly into a massive rock formation, standing as tall as a 4-story building. And what makes it even more remarkable is its complete isolation in that vast open landscape. This structure is known as Qasr al-Farid, also intriguingly called the Lonely Castle. It is located within the ancient city of Madain Salah in northern Saudi Arabia, a place that was once an important center of an ancient civilization. From its name alone, many might assume it was a castle or a defensive fortress. But the truth is entirely different. Qasr al-Farid is actually a tomb, carved around the 1st century AD, and the most unusual thing about it is that it was never completed. If you observe the structure from a distance, the facade appears like a sculpture frozen in the middle of its creation. The upper portion is intricately carved, with precise, balanced, and highly artistic details. But as your eyes move downward, the surface becomes increasingly rough, as if the craftsman suddenly stopped, leaving the monument unfinished forever. Have you ever wondered why? According to researchers, ancient artisans carved the structure from top to bottom. This method allowed them to better control the overall shape and avoid damaging completed details. However, for some unknown reason, perhaps a sudden event, war, or a shift in power, the project was abandoned, leaving behind an unfinished story that has lasted for more than 2,000 years. But don't think Qasr al-Farid is a unique case. In fact, it is just one part of a much larger complex of 111 tombs in the Madain Salih area. Among them, 94 tombs are decorated with incredibly intricate carvings and patterns, showcasing the remarkable artistic skill of ancient craftsmen. Because of its immense historical and cultural value, the entire site was recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site in 2008. Yet, among all these monuments, Qasr al-Farid stands out in a very unique way. It stands alone, separate from any cluster of tombs, as if telling a story that no one fully remembers anymore. Perhaps it is precisely this loneliness that makes it so captivating. Just think about it. In such a harsh desert environment where survival itself is a constant struggle, people were still able to create structures of such scale and intricate detail. Doesn't that speak to their extraordinary stone carving skills and reflect a civilization that was once highly advanced and powerful? What's even more fascinating is that although this tomb was never completed, it is exactly this incompleteness that makes it so special. It feels like a story left unfinished, one that makes people even more curious, even more eager to discover what truly happened. Cemetery of millions of mummies in the desert, an unsolved mystery of ancient Egypt. In the middle of a vast desert, where sand stretches endlessly to the horizon, beneath what seems like an infinite layer of dunes lie millions of bodies that have remained still for thousands of years. Not dozens, not hundreds, but millions of mummies. It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? Yet this is exactly what scientists have discovered at a site called Fag el-Gamis, located in the Fayum Desert, about 60 miles south of Cairo. And as you might expect, from the moment it was announced, this discovery sent shockwaves through the archaeological community, as its scale is almost unprecedented in history. Of course, what makes this cemetery so remarkable is not just the sheer number of burials, but the people who were laid to rest there. If you've ever heard of Egypt's famous tombs, those of powerful pharaohs, with kings elaborately mummified and placed in golden coffins, then the story at Fag el-Gamis is completely different. Most of the mummies here belong to ordinary people, simple individuals who once lived, worked, and existed in ancient society. They were not buried in luxurious coffins, nor did they undergo complex mummification rituals. Instead, their bodies were simply wrapped in cloth and placed directly into the ground. It may sound modest, but this simplicity offers a very real glimpse into the life and death of everyday people in ancient Egypt. As archaeologists explore deeper into the cemetery, they realize that this area was once very different from what it is today. Thousands of years ago, the region around Fag el-Gamis was fertile, home to thriving cities and even ancient pyramids. But over time, the land became desert, and all that remains now is sand, and the secrets buried beneath it. So far, researchers have excavated only about 1,700 mummies, a very small number compared to the site's true scale. And believe it or not, they estimate it may take at least 30 more years to fully uncover this place. That means countless stories are still lying beneath the sand, waiting to be told. One of the most fascinating aspects is how well the mummies have been preserved. Without the need for complex embalming techniques, the dry desert climate has naturally preserved their bodies for thousands of years. Some mummies have even been found with jewelry, personal belongings, and glass objects, like small memories carried into the afterlife. Among all these discoveries, one image in particular has deeply moved many people. It is the mummy of a baby girl, only about 18 months old, carefully wrapped in linen and buried with small pieces of jewelry. Even after more than 1,000 years, the way she was laid to rest clearly shows that her family's love for her never faded. In addition, scientists have discovered some mummies with unusually large body sizes, such as one individual estimated to be about 6.5 feet tall. This raises many questions. Could this be evidence of a distinct group of people, or simply natural variation within a large population? Of course, these questions remain unanswered. But as you can see, the more Fagelgamus is explored, the more mysterious it becomes. Each mummy is an untold story. Each layer of sand that is uncovered reveals another piece of the past. And perhaps what makes this place so captivating is not just the number in the millions, but the fact that behind each of those individuals once existed a life, a family, and an entire world that we are still trying to understand, little by little, every day. Ghost ship containing the remains of a 1,200-year-old Viking queen. An ordinary field, one that farmers had plowed for decades. Yet beneath that layer of soil lay a massive ship, about 62 feet long, resting silently for more than 1,200 years. No one saw it, no one touched it, until modern technology looked beneath the ground and uncovered a secret that left the entire archaeological world stunned. That is exactly what archaeologists from the Norwegian Institute for Cultural Heritage Research discovered at Gjellestad, in the southeastern region of Oslo, Norway. During the excavation, they did not begin by digging as in traditional archaeological digs. Instead, they used ground-penetrating radar, a technology that allows researchers to scan what lies beneath the surface without disturbing it. And it was this very technology that revealed the image of an ancient ship hidden beneath what seemed like a completely ordinary field. The ship is estimated to date from around 750 to 850 AD, placing it firmly within the Viking Age. Measuring up to 62 feet in length, it was not just a vessel, it was also a tomb. At first that might sound unusual. Why would ancient people use a ship as a burial site? But for the Vikings, this was a deeply meaningful ritual. They believed the ship would carry the deceased on their final journey into the afterlife. And not everyone was granted such an honor. Only individuals of high status, such as nobles, great warriors, or powerful leaders, were buried in this way. And this is likely what makes this ghost ship so mysterious. It does not stand alone. Surrounding the site is an entire ancient cemetery with at least 20 other graves. Nearby is also a well-known burial site called Gel Mound, which dates even earlier, from around 400 to 500 AD. Together, these form a complex that suggests this area was once an important center of a powerful Viking community. Based on the ship's size and structure, archaeologists believe the person buried inside was no ordinary individual. It could have been a powerful queen, a king, or a renowned warrior respected by the entire community. Although the exact identity has yet to be confirmed, all evidence points to someone of extremely high status in that society. What's particularly fascinating is that despite lying underground for over a millennium, the ship remains remarkably well preserved. Initial surveys show that much of its structure is still intact to an astonishing degree. While it is not yet clear whether it was a sailing ship or a rowing vessel, Viking shipbuilding techniques were already famous worldwide, and this discovery may help us better understand their craftsmanship. Researchers believe that a ship burial of this kind, especially one surrounded by multiple graves, is a clear expression of wealth, power, and social connection during the Scandinavian Iron Age. It was not just a resting place, but a statement of the deceased's status. In the near future, this ghost ship will be carefully excavated and reconstructed, allowing modern audiences to witness a remarkable piece of Viking heritage firsthand. Until then, let's wait and see who exactly lies within the ship tomb and what extraordinary identity they may reveal. 3,000-year-old horse-drawn chariot inlaid with thousands of turquoise pieces. Next, we explore an extraordinary archaeological discovery from China, a nearly 3,000-year-old bronze horse-drawn chariot that has been successfully excavated and reconstructed, marking a major step forward in understanding the ancient civilization of the Western Zhou period. The story begins at the Zhouyuan archaeological site, located in Xiashan village, northwest of Shanxi province, China. There, archaeologists from the Shanxi Institute of Archaeology uncovered a remarkable artifact in 2017. At first, they saw only scattered traces, thousands of fragments buried for millennia. But through experience and persistence, experts quickly realized they were standing before one of the most important discoveries in Chinese archaeology, a bronze chariot from the Western Zhou dynasty, dating from around 1046 to 771 BC. But that wasn't all. During the excavation, the research team also discovered the skeletons of 4 horses lying near the chariot, indicating that they were the very animals that once pulled it in ancient times. DNA analysis showed that these were purebred, fully grown horses that had been carefully cared for, reflecting the high status of the chariot's owner. The reconstruction process became like assembling a massive puzzle. After carefully cleaning each bronze fragment, archaeologists painstakingly restored every detail and feature. The result did not disappoint. The chariot emerged in impressive size, about 10.3 feet long, 8.9 feet wide, and 4.9 feet high. Its structure is primarily made of bronze, but the most breathtaking aspect is its decoration. Thousands of turquoise and jade pieces intricately inlaid, along with finely crafted animal motifs and some painted components. According to researcher Wang Zhangkui, marks found on the wheels suggest that the chariot was rarely used. It was not a typical war chariot, but rather a ceremonial vehicle reserved for high-ranking nobles of the Western Zhou dynasty. For that reason, craftsmanship, beauty, and luxury were prioritized over practicality. Another notable detail, shared by expert Huang Xiaohuan, is the turquoise inlay. These hundreds of gemstones not only enhance the chariot's visual appeal, but also provide valuable data that helps archaeologists better understand ancient craftsmanship and aesthetic values. Thanks to this, the chariot is not merely a means of transportation, it is a work of art, a symbol of power and social status during the Western Zhou period. As of now, this is only the second horse-drawn chariot ever discovered, excavated, and successfully reconstructed, and the only intact bronze chariot of its kind in China. The restoration process has been completed, and in the near future, the archaeological team plans to reconstruct the full original structure to create a complete model, just as it existed nearly 3 millennia ago. The artifact is expected to be displayed at the Shanxi Archaeology Museum, where it will be open to the public and visitors from around the world, offering a chance to witness a treasure that holds not only archaeological value, but also represents the peak of cultural, artistic, and technological development during the glorious Western Zhou era. If you love history, don't miss the opportunity to see a timeless masterpiece like this with your own eyes. 2.6-mile Aboriginal figure in the Australian desert. After 20 years, the creator remains unknown. Did you know that our mysterious world is full of enigmas that don't come from some distant past thousands of years ago, but instead appear right in the modern era, right before our eyes, so clear that they cannot be denied, yet still impossible to explain? The Marree Man is one such story. It all began with a chance moment in 1998. During a flight over the southern Australian desert, pilot Trevor Wright suddenly looked down and spotted a strange shape stretching across the ground. It wasn't natural rock or sand, it was clearly the figure of a human, deeply etched into the desert, posed as if holding a stick, possibly a boomerang. That single discovery sparked a search that has lasted more than 20 years and still has no conclusion. As you may know, most giant ground drawings we've heard of come from ancient civilizations, remnants of a distant past. But the Marree Man is completely different. It isn't ancient, it appears to have been created in modern times. And that makes the question, who made it, more difficult than ever to answer. The sheer size of this figure is astonishing. It stretches about 2.6 miles in length, with a perimeter of roughly 17.4 miles. That means if you stand on the ground, you would never be able to see its full shape. It only truly reveals itself from above, as if it were created specifically for eyes in the sky. And to create something of this scale, ordinary human effort wouldn't be enough. Whoever made it must have had a deep understanding of mapping, coordinates, and possibly even used satellite technology to align every detail. Yet strangely, no one has ever come forward to claim responsibility. Shortly after its discovery, a series of press releases were sent out. However, what caught people's attention was that the writing style didn't match typical Australian English. This led to speculation. Could it have been the work of an anonymous group from the United States? The mystery deepened in 1999, when a strange fax was sent to authorities claiming that an object was buried near the head of the figure. When excavated, they found an American flag, an Olympic symbol, and a quote from a book about Aboriginal hunting techniques. It sounded like a clue, but not enough to identify anyone. Some even suggested that the creator might have been Bardius Goldberg, an Australian artist. But ironically, he passed away before the truth could be confirmed. And from that point on, every theory seemed to hit a dead end. Over the years, this massive figure has faced the erosion of time. Desert winds have gradually worn away lines that were once clearly visible. Facing the risk of disappearance, local authorities and residents took action. In 2016, they carried out a 5-day restoration effort to preserve the figure, keeping the mystery alive for the future. Yet even after restoration, the biggest question remains: who created it and why? At one point, Dick Smith, a well-known Australian entrepreneur, even offered a $5,000 reward to anyone who could solve the mystery, a challenge not only for scientists but for anyone curious about the world. So perhaps what makes the Marree Man truly special is not just its enormous size, but the silence surrounding it. No clear traces, no explanation, no one claiming responsibility, as if it was created and then abandoned, left behind to challenge human curiosity year after year. The mysterious tomb of 25 women and children and the unsolved secrets in Peru. Amid the arid lands of Trujillo, Peru, where layers of dust and sand have buried countless ancient stories, archaeologists have recently uncovered a discovery that sends chills down anyone's spine. It is the finding of a mass grave approximately 33 feet wide, sealed with hardened mud as if someone had deliberately locked away its secrets for centuries. Then, as the final layers of soil were cleared, what appeared before them was not one, but around 25 sets of human remains, most of them belonging to women and children. Hearing this alone is enough to give you goosebumps, isn't it? But for researchers, what puzzled them even more was not just the number of individuals buried there, but what lay beside them. Next to the skeletons were needles, stakes, and weaving tools, objects that may seem ordinary yet carry profound meaning. It appears these women were not ordinary individuals, but rather people devoted to weaving, a craft that held significant importance in that society. They were buried in a seated position with their legs drawn up as if preserving a ritual practice from their lifetime. Notably, most of them were under 30 years old. However, according to Jorge Meneses Bartra, the head of the research project, the average life expectancy at that time was only about 40 years. This means they were not considered young in the way we think of it today. Another detail that makes the story even more intriguing is that the bodies were wrapped in 2 layers of fabric, one made of cotton and another from plant fibers. This suggests that the burial was carried out carefully and intentionally, rather than in haste. Furthermore, dozens of ceramic artifacts found within the tomb reinforce the theory that these individuals likely belonged to the upper class, not common people. So what exactly caused them all to be laid to rest here? And how did they die? To this day, those questions remain unanswered. What is known, however, is that when mentioning this region, one cannot ignore Chan Chan, the ancient city whose name means shining sun in the Chimu language. It was once the largest city in the Americas during the pre-Columbian era and served as the center of the powerful Chimu Empire, which was known for its human sacrifice rituals. This empire reached its peak in the 15th century before being conquered by the Inca around 1470. Because of this, many have considered a seemingly reasonable hypothesis. Could these women and children have been victims of a sacrificial ritual? However, scientists argue that while this theory may sound plausible, reality is far more complex, and there is no evidence to support it. To date, archaeologists have found no clear signs indicating that they were sacrificed. There are no traces of mass trauma, nor any confirmed evidence of violent rituals. In other words, the cause of their deaths remains a mystery. Even within the tomb itself, certain details only deepen the confusion. One skeleton remains fully intact in its anatomical structure, suggesting it was buried shortly after death. Yet right beside it lies another skeleton that appears disturbed, as if it had been moved or reburied at a later time. So what really happened in this place? A mysterious ritual? An unrecorded catastrophe? Or a story that history has simply forgotten? Do you have a reasonable explanation for this case? If you do, don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments below so everyone can join the discussion. 200-year-old body preserved as if newly laid to rest. Amid the fast-paced modern life of New York City, where it seems every story has already been told and every mystery uncovered, An unexpected discovery in the borough of Queens in 2018 left both the public astonished and scientists deeply puzzled. Specifically, during the construction of a building project, a group of workers accidentally struck a strange object beneath the ground. As they dug it up, they uncovered a heavy iron coffin, and inside it lay the remarkably well-preserved body of a young woman. At first glance, the body appeared so intact that it seemed as though she had passed away only days earlier. This immediately prompted local police to step in, suspecting it might be a recent homicide. However, all initial assumptions were quickly dismissed once the autopsy results were released. And from that point on, a strange story began to unfold, taking us back nearly 2 centuries in time. The woman in the coffin was identified as an African American who had died approximately 170 years ago, at the age of around 25 to 30. She stood about 5 feet 3 inches tall and was found in a carefully prepared state, dressed in a silk nightgown typical of the 19th century, wearing a hand-knitted cap, long knee-high stockings, with her hair neatly styled and her body thoroughly cleansed. These details suggest that she was not only given a respectful burial, but may have held a certain social status, or at the very least, was deeply loved by her family. However, what truly astonished researchers was the near-perfect preservation of her body, especially her skin, which retained both its texture and pigmentation to such a degree that forensic examiners could clearly observe distinct smallpox scars on her forehead and chest, believed to be the cause of her death. What makes this even more remarkable is that her body showed no signs of being embalmed with any preservation chemicals, a technique common in modern times, yet completely absent in this case. So how was her body preserved so extraordinarily well for nearly 2 centuries? The answer may lie in the iron coffin itself, a seemingly simple object that proved to be the key factor. Experts believe this type of coffin was designed to be completely airtight, preventing air, moisture, and bacteria from entering. This created ideal conditions for the natural preservation of the body. Such coffins were manufactured in the mid-19th century by specialized companies and were typically used by the upper class. During times when deadly diseases like smallpox were widespread, these sealed coffins were often used to prevent the spread of infection from the deceased. The story of this young woman's body is not only a shocking archaeological discovery, but also opens the door to many unanswered questions. Who is she? Why was she buried in a place that has now become a construction site in the heart of New York City? What was her family's life like during that turbulent period in history? And how many more secrets still lie silently beneath the city's surface? These questions continue to intrigue both archaeologists and the public alike. And what about you? What do you think? Knowing that right beneath your feet, in one of the most modern cities in the world, there are still pieces of history quietly waiting to be told. 1,000-year-old skeleton with hair still intact. The mystery atop a pyramid in Peru that stunned scientists. Did you know that right in the heart of modern-day Lima, Peru, where traffic never stops and life moves at a relentless pace, there exists a place where time seems to have been forgotten? That place is the ancient site of Huaca Pucllana, and it was here, during what seemed like a routine excavation, that archaeologists stumbled upon a discovery so eerie it sent chills down anyone who heard about it. The remains of a person over 1,000 years old, preserved in an almost unbelievable condition, especially the brown hair, which still retained its shape as if time had never touched it. Just imagine this. A person who left this world 1,000 years ago, yet traces of them remain so vividly visible. What would that feel like? It certainly wouldn't feel ordinary, would it? Archaeologist Mirella Ganoza, who directly participated in the excavation, stated that the remains were found inside a tomb located at the very top of a clay pyramid standing over 69 feet tall. This structure was no random mound of earth. It was a carefully constructed building with 7 distinct tiers, built by people of the ancient Lima culture. More importantly, this site once served as a ceremonial and religious center, meaning not just anyone could be buried in such a significant location. The remains were discovered in a seated position, with the legs drawn up, a burial style commonly seen in many ancient cultures. However, what truly caught the attention of scientists was a smaller detail. The individual's teeth were almost completely unchanged, indicating an extraordinary level of preservation. The body had been wrapped in a simple layer of fabric, not overly elaborate, but sufficient to maintain its condition over the centuries. Moreover, inside the tomb were several accompanying artifacts, including ceramic vessels and woven textiles. These items are not only valuable in themselves, but also serve as important clues that help archaeologists determine the age and cultural background of the deceased. Based on this evidence, researchers believe the remains date back to around 1000 AD during the time of the Ixma culture, a community that once thrived along the central coast of Peru. The Ixma are believed to have built at least 16 pyramids and controlled the region until the rise of the Inca Empire, which eventually replaced them. This means the remains are not just of a single individual, but part of an entire civilization that once existed and then vanished. Interestingly, the Huaca Pucllana site itself was constructed around 500 AD and is now located right in the center of what is today Miraflores. In other words, for hundreds of years, history lay silently beneath the feet of modern society without anyone realizing it. To this day, the gender of the remains has not yet been determined, adding yet another layer of mystery to this already fascinating story. However, thanks to this discovery, scientists now have a valuable opportunity to study more deeply into the health, lifestyle, and social structure of ancient Peruvian societies, and it doesn't stop there. In 2023, at the archaeological site of Cajamarquilla, about 15.5 miles from Lima, another mummy was discovered. This time, it was a teenager, believed to have been the victim of a ritual sacrifice. As you can see, two discoveries, two completely different stories, one still shrouded in mystery, the other bearing clear signs of ancient ritual practices. So what do you think? Was the mummy atop that pyramid an ordinary person or someone of special importance in ancient society? And if given the chance, would you dare to stand before it in real life and look closely into the face of the past? 2,000-year-old pizza fresco. In a recent excavation at the center of Pompeii, Italian archaeologists discovered a wall painting dating back more than 2,000 years, located inside an ancient house near what is believed to have been a bakery. What stunned the world was the image depicted in this fresco, a dish carefully placed on a plate, accompanied by a cup of wine and fruit, portraying a meal that is both simple and elegant. But what truly captured everyone's attention was the flatbread at the center of the plate, an item whose shape, structure, and presentation bear a striking resemblance to what we now recognize as pizza. According to Gabriel Zugtregel, director of the Pompeii Archaeological Park, the dish shown in the painting could be considered a distant ancestor of modern pizza. Although it lacks two key ingredients we consider essential today, tomatoes and mozzarella cheese, which only appeared in Europe centuries later, it clearly shares many similarities with focaccia, a traditional Italian flatbread. This type of bread is typically brushed with olive oil, sprinkled with herbs, and sometimes topped with ingredients such as onions, olives, or herb-based sauces similar to pesto. It was commonly served as an appetizer or enjoyed alongside wine and ancient meals. More than just a simple food item, the image of this flatbread represents an entire aspect of culinary culture in ancient Roman society. Its depiction alongside fruit and wine, placed on a silver plate, reflects a clear blend between everyday life and the refined lifestyle of the upper class at the time. It was a humble dish, yet sophisticated enough to appear on the tables of the wealthy, demonstrating the diversity in taste and dining customs of ancient people. This discovery not only surprised culinary experts, but also opened a new window into understanding how many of the foods we enjoy today may have originated thousands of years ago. The act of baking flatbread, adding seasonings, and using herbs, olive oil, and wine was already part of Roman meals, showing that people of the past possessed remarkable culinary creativity, even without the modern kitchen tools we rely on today. Interestingly, this fresco was not found in a grand palace or lavish temple, but in an ordinary home near an ancient bakery. This suggests that such distinctive foods were not reserved solely for the elite, but were also part of everyday life for ordinary people in Pompeii. That sense of familiarity adds even more value to the discovery. It tells a deeply human story about baking, eating, and enjoying the flavors of life, even if it was just through a simple slice of bread served on a silver plate. Today, pizza has become one of the most popular foods in the world, with countless variations across different countries, from traditional Neapolitan pizza to cheese-loaded American styles and seafood pizzas in parts of Asia. But perhaps every time you take a bite of a hot, fragrant slice of pizza, you are, in a way, connecting with history, reaching back to a baker in Pompeii 2,000 years ago, placing a freshly made flatbread on a plate, crafted with heart, herbs, and boundless creativity. Sometimes history is not only found in books, it can be discovered in an ancient piece of bread, a painting on a wall, or even in the fleeting flavor of a familiar dish. And pizza, as we've just explored, may not simply be food, it could very well be one of humanity's greatest culinary legacies. 2,700-year-old toilet reveals a shocking truth. Ancient elites lived luxuriously, but not cleanly. It may sound strange, but sometimes the most astonishing archaeological discoveries come from the most ordinary things. Not gold, not treasure, just a toilet. A perfect example of this was found right in the heart of Jerusalem, where archaeologists uncovered a relic about 2,700 years old. An ancient toilet located within the ruins of a palace overlooking the old city. According to scientist Yaakov Billig, this toilet dates back to the 7th century BCE, toward the end of the period of the Judean kings. At first, when it was discovered, many people doubted it. It looked like nothing more than a stone block with a hole on top. How could that be called a toilet? But as archaeologists dug deeper, they found a cesspit carved directly into the limestone beneath it. At that point, everything became clearer than ever. Although the excavation has not been fully completed due to funding limitations, researchers estimate that the restroom area measures about 5 by 6.5 feet, roughly comparable to a modern bathroom. Hearing this, you can probably already imagine it, right? People in the past were not nearly as primitive as we often assume. The toilet seat itself was also found on site, and interestingly, it wasn't made from modern materials like plastic or acrylic, but carved from limestone, a durable material, though probably quite cold to sit on, if you can imagine. What's even more remarkable is its location. This toilet wasn't in an ordinary home. It was installed inside an Iron Age palace, where columns were decorated with symbols of the Judean kings. In other words, this wasn't something common people could use. It was a privilege reserved for the elite. Back then, having a private toilet was already a luxury. But what might surprise you even more is that this luxury didn't necessarily mean cleanliness. During the research process, archaeologists discovered a rather unusual detail. Around 30 to 40 bowls were placed within the restroom area. At first, that sounds absurd, right? Who would bring bowls into a place like that to eat? But precisely because it seems so illogical, scientists proposed a more reasonable hypothesis. These bowls may have been used to hold scented oils or aromatic wax to reduce unpleasant odors. It sounds refined, but the truth behind it isn't quite so pleasant. Scientists examined the cesspit below to better understand the diet and digestive health of the elite during the late Iron Age. From the pit, they collected 15 sediment samples and, under a microscope, found eggs of roundworms, tapeworms, whipworms, and pinworms. This suggests that even the wealthy class in ancient Jerusalem faced serious sanitation problems. The reasons aren't hard to guess. These parasites typically spread through the fecal-oral route, meaning improper waste management contaminated water and food sources. Even the use of human waste as fertilizer for crops likely contributed to the spread of disease. As for tapeworms, they were most likely caused by consuming undercooked or improperly prepared meat. In simple terms, despite living in palaces, having private toilets, and even using fragrances to mask odors, they still couldn't escape parasitic infections. And that's what truly makes this discovery so thought-provoking. It turns out that wealth and power in the past did not necessarily mean health or cleanliness as we often imagine. At a time when medicine was still underdeveloped, many people may have carried parasites in their bodies for their entire lives without any effective treatment. You see, something as ordinary as a toilet can unexpectedly expose a hidden side of history. Fascinating, isn't it? Giant footprint. A clue to a forgotten ancient human species. Have you ever imagined that giant humans once existed on Earth? Beings taller and larger than any modern human? It sounds like something out of Greek mythology or ancient folklore, doesn't it? But recently, in a remote mountainous region of southern Africa, a shocking discovery has forced archaeologists to reconsider what we know about human history. A massive footprint measuring up to 47 inches in length has been discovered, and according to many researchers, it could be compelling evidence of an ancient human species of enormous size. This footprint was found imprinted on a steep rock face, something that immediately raised doubts. After all, how could anyone walk barefoot and leave a footprint on a vertical cliff? Even the most optimistic observers found it hard to believe this could be real. However, scientists did not rush to dismiss it. They conducted a series of technical analyses and thorough geological surveys, ultimately concluding that the footprint was originally formed on flat ground. Over millions of years, tectonic activity caused the rock layer to tilt and eventually stand nearly upright as it appears today. In other words, the footprint didn't climb the cliff as rumors suggest. Rather, it was literally bent and lifted by time and natural forces. Ironically, this very process helped preserve the footprint, protecting it from being buried or destroyed over time. But that's not all. Another fascinating hypothesis has also been proposed. The footprint was not formed in soft clay or sand, materials that could easily be washed away after heavy rains. Instead, it may have been imprinted on a layer of cooling magma when the ground still retained heat from ancient volcanic activity. This would have allowed the surface to remain soft enough to capture the shape before quickly hardening into stone, creating a time sculpture that has endured for millions of years. The big question is, who or what left that footprint? If the footprint is 47 inches long, then its maker must have stood around 16 to 17 feet tall, far beyond the average height of modern humans, and even nearly double the tallest individuals ever recorded. Could there have been a giant human species that once coexisted with, or even predated, our ancestors, Homo sapiens? Or is this simply an unusual geological formation that happens to resemble a human footprint? Scientists still don't have a definitive answer. Some believe this could be overlooked evidence from a period that science has yet to fully explore. Others are more cautious, arguing that further interdisciplinary research, from paleontology and geology to anthropological archaeology, is needed to determine what truly happened in this remote region of Africa. But whether you believe in ancient legends or simply enjoy the mysteries of the past, it's hard to deny that this footprint has opened a new door, a doorway into a time not found in textbooks, where creatures of immense size and strength may once have existed, far beyond our current understanding. What do you think? Is this a message from a long-forgotten era, or just a playful trick of nature? Who knows? Millions of years from now, even our own footprints today might become a mystery that future generations struggle to unravel. 2,000-year-old city humanity never knew existed. There are stories that seem to exist only in ancient books, faint records that no one can confidently say are true, or just myths. But sometimes, history has a way of surprising us, completely rewriting what we thought we knew. And this time, near the small town of Deza, archaeologists have uncovered something that could force researchers to rethink the ancient past of Spain. A city more than 2,000 years old, with almost no clear historical records mentioning it before. Just hearing that already sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? For a long time, this area was largely overlooked, not because it wasn't important, but because it sat right next to a quarry. People were focused on extracting resources, not imagining that beneath the ground lay an entire ancient city. Ironically, that very neglect helped preserve what remained of the past. Recent excavations conducted by the Polytechnic University of Madrid have begun to reveal the first traces: stone walls, architectural remains, and especially the presence of a large Roman fort located right nearby, all of which feel like scattered pieces slowly forming a complete picture. According to Vicente Alejandre, the mayor of Deza, no systematic archaeological study had ever been carried out in this area to properly assess its historical significance. In other words, for years, a hidden chapter of history may have been lying right beneath people's feet without anyone realizing it. But what makes this discovery even more intriguing is the hypothesis currently being explored by scientists. By comparing ancient texts and historical legends, researchers have begun to suspect that this city may actually be Titiacos, a place mentioned in ancient accounts but whose exact location has never been confirmed. If this turns out to be true, then this is not just an ancient city. It would be a ghost of history finally brought back into the light. Titiacos is believed to have been a stronghold of the Celtiberians, a people once thought to have lived mainly in scattered tribal groups, never forming large urban settlements. But this discovery could completely change how we understand them. Think about it. If a culture once considered simple actually built large cities like this, then have we been misjudging an entire historical era? And the story becomes even more dramatic. Titiacos is also believed to be connected to the Sertorian War, a brutal civil conflict that took place between 80 and 72 BCE, fought between the rebel forces of Sertorius and the Roman government in Rome. It was a turbulent period where cities were not just places to live, but strategic military strongholds. The discovery of a Roman fortress right next to the site makes this hypothesis even more compelling. It is possible that after the region was conquered and incorporated into the Roman province of Hispania Citerior, the Romans built a military base there, to control and secure the territory. Everything seems to be slowly fitting together, but there is still no definitive answer. For now, Spanish scientists continue to excavate and study the site in greater depth to confirm whether this truly is Tityakos. Because every artifact uncovered, every wall revealed, could be a key to unlocking a chapter of history that has been forgotten for over 2 millennia. And perhaps the most thought-provoking lesson here is this: history is not always found in textbooks. Sometimes it lies right beneath our feet, waiting for the day it is finally discovered. So what do you think? If a city that once didn't exist suddenly appears before us, would you trust what history books say, or start questioning everything we thought we knew? The ancient shadow warrior tomb reveals the truth about the Avar army that once terrified Eastern Europe. During renovation and expansion work at an old cemetery in Vinkovci, eastern Croatia, workers accidentally discovered 2 unusual graves that were completely different from the surrounding burials. The moment they saw them, they immediately stopped work. No one dared to touch them again. Think about it. What could possibly make people who are used to digging through soil and stone every day suddenly hesitate like that? No one knew at first, right? It wasn't until archaeologists were called in that everything gradually became clear. They confirmed that these were not ordinary graves, but the resting places of 2 warriors belonging to one of the most mysterious armies in history, the Avars. A name that, if you've never heard it before, is not surprising, because they themselves vanished from history in a very puzzling way. The Avars once struck fear across Eastern Europe during the early Middle Ages. They were skilled horsemen, constantly on the move, and especially famous for their deadly archery skills. But despite their former power, very few traces of them remain today. That is why this discovery feels like opening a door that had long been sealed shut. Inside the 2 graves, scientists found the nearly intact skeletons of 2 adult men. Even from the bone structure alone, it is clear they were strong warriors, accustomed to a life of combat. In one of the graves, researchers also found a bronze belt buckle dating from around the 7th to 9th centuries AD, a small detail, but one that helps define an entire historical period. According to Anita Rapan-Papesha, the archaeologist directly involved in the excavation, what makes this discovery especially important is that there had previously been no clear evidence of Avar burial sites in this region. The reason may lie in their burial style. The graves closely resemble Roman ones on the surface, making them easy to mistake unless carefully examined. But the most surprising detail is this: these warriors were not buried alone. They were buried together with their horses. It may sound unusual, but for the Avars, this was completely normal. For them, horses were not just transportation. They were battle companions, an inseparable part of their lives. Being buried with their horses reflected a deep belief that even in the afterlife, they would continue their journey together. However, another detail makes the story even more puzzling. One of the graves had been disturbed by grave robbers. But strangely, although the horses were buried with valuable equipment, they were left completely untouched. Why would that be? Did the robbers ignore valuable items, or were they afraid of something? That question still has no answer to this day. What we do know is that the Avars once built a powerful state known as the Avar Khaganate. They forced even great empires, including the Byzantine Empire, to treat them with caution. But after many years of continuous warfare, they gradually weakened and disappeared around the 7th century after conflicts with the Bulgarians. An army that once spread fear across an entire continent vanished almost without a trace. And now, the 2 graves in Vinkovci are slowly revealing the first pieces of that forgotten story. Because of this is not just an archaeological discovery, it is a reminder that history still holds many untold stories. The oldest cave painting in the world, discovered in Indonesia, tens of thousands of years ago, when humans had no written language and no books. How do you think they told the story of their world? According to scientists, the answer may lie deep inside a remote cave on the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia, where archaeologists have recently discovered what is believed to be the oldest known painting in the world. The painting itself is not overly complex, it simply depicts a wild boar. But what makes it extraordinary is its age, at least 45,500 years old. Just hearing that number is enough to make you stop in disbelief, isn't it? This artwork is located on the wall of Ling Tadongge Cave, a place almost completely isolated from the outside world. To reach it, you must hike for nearly an hour through rugged terrain, and it is only accessible during the dry season. The local Bugis community even confirms that no Western researchers had ever set foot there or seen this painting before. In other words, it had remained silently hidden for tens of thousands of years. The painting measures about 53 by 21 inches and was created using a dark red pigment. The image of the wild boar is quite clear, showing its raised bristling mane and the distinctive features of an adult male. Behind it, there are also two handprints, possibly a way for the ancient artists to sign their work. It may sound simple, but think about it. Nearly 50,000 years ago, humans were already able to observe, remember, and deliberately recreate images in this way. What does that tell us? According to researcher Adam Brum, the Sulawesi wild boar was not only a common prey animal, but also an important part of prehistoric human life. People hunted this species for tens of thousands of years, and over time it became a central subject in their art, especially during the Ice Age. But the story doesn't end there. Before this boar painting was discovered, scientists from Griffith University had already found another cave painting in Layang Bulu Sepang, also on Sulawesi, dating back around 43,900 years. That painting depicts a group of hunters, but strangely, they do not look entirely human. The figures have elongated faces, protruding mouths like animal snouts. Some have tails, while others appear to have beak-like features. At first glance, it feels more like mythology than reality. However, scientists believe these may represent humans wearing animal skins during hunts, either as camouflage or for spiritual purposes. You see, even in such ancient times, humans were already imagining, storytelling, and creating hybrid forms of half-human, half-animal figures. And it is cave paintings like these that help us better understand the journey of humanity. Many scientists believe our ancestors migrated to Australia around 65,000 years ago, and to do so, they would have had to pass through islands in Indonesia, including Sulawesi. These paintings are not just art, they are traces of a massive journey. They show that early humans were not only surviving and hunting, but also thinking, imagining, and recording the world around them in their own way. This may represent some of the earliest steps toward the development of language, thought, and ultimately, the civilization we live in today. So what do you think? How can something as simple as a painting contain a story spanning tens of thousands of years? And when you look at that wild boar image, do you see just an ancient drawing or the very first message from our ancestors to the future? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Who knows? Your insights might one day help future generations better understand where we all came from. Cremated remains reveal a shocking secret of the Aztec Empire. Deep beneath the ancient layers of Plaza Garibaldi, today a bustling square filled with tourists and the sounds of mariachi music, a terrifying secret from the past has unexpectedly come to light. Archaeologists from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, INAH, during excavations at the site, discovered a ceramic vessel containing human ashes. At first glance, it may seem simple, but behind this jar lies a chilling story of ritual sacrifice once carried out by the powerful Aztec Empire. Have you ever wondered what drove the Aztecs, a civilization renowned for its advanced knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and architecture, to perform such blood-soaked rituals? Let's follow this newly uncovered archaeological trail and explore why this urn of cremated remains may change the way we understand the spiritual world of the Aztecs. Inside the discovery, experts also found 13 incense burners arranged around an ancient altar. What makes this even more fascinating is their precise alignment along the east-west and north-south axes. Does that sound familiar? This corresponds directly to the Tonalpohualli system, a 260-day astronomical calendar used by the Aztecs to determine sacred timing for important rituals. And why the number 13? In Aztec belief, the sky was divided into 13 levels, each inhabited by different gods. Could it be that this arrangement was not only for worship, but also a way to symbolically open a gateway for the souls of sacrificial victims to ascend to the divine realm? The vessel containing the cremated remains is clear evidence that human sacrifice rituals once took place here. one of the most controversial and haunting practices of the Aztec civilization. According to historical records and confirmation from archaeologist Marree Man, victims were first sacrificed, then cremated, and their ashes placed inside the vessel as an offering, a complete dedication to the gods. This raises an unsettling question. Who were the chosen victims? Were they prisoners of war, honored individuals selected for sacrifice, or simply unfortunate souls caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? And what could have driven such a highly advanced civilization to believe that the prosperity of the community depended on the death of an individual? Can you imagine the eerie scene? Fires burning in the middle of a plaza, prayers echoing through the air, and thick incense smoke rising into the sky? A ritual both mystical and bloody, reflecting a powerful yet deeply unsettling belief in supernatural forces. If I say this story is more than just an archaeological discovery, that it is a window into the Aztec soul, where life and death intertwined and where sacrifice was believed to be the path to the gods, I would not be exaggerating at all. The oldest pearl diving town in the UAE, hidden beneath the turquoise waters of the Persian Gulf, Minya Island, a peaceful island off the coast of al-Quwain in the United Arab Emirates, UAE, has suddenly become the focus of global archaeological attention after a groundbreaking discovery shed light on the long and complex history of a region once known as a thriving commercial hub. On January 20th, during a large-scale excavation, archaeologists uncovered an ancient pearl diving settlement believed to be the oldest ever found in the Gulf region. This discovery provides vivid evidence that people here were already building communities, developing professions, and living in stable settlements thousands of years ago. According to the research team from the al-Quwain Department of Tourism and Archaeology, in collaboration with the United Arab Emirates University, the Italian Archaeological Mission, and the Institute for the Study of the Ancient World at New York University, the settlement dates back to the late 6th century AD, during the pre-Islamic period, before the Prophet Muhammad founded Islam in the early 7th century. Covering an area of over 30 acres, the town once housed thousands of people and contained hundreds of homes with diverse architectural styles, from modest, tightly packed dwellings to larger buildings with central courtyards, clear evidence of social stratification within this ancient community. What makes the discovery even more remarkable is that the pearl diving town is located just south of a 1,400-year-old Christian monastery previously discovered on Minya Island. This has led scientists to suggest that the inhabitants may have been Christians, painting a far more diverse cultural and religious picture of the Arabian Peninsula before the rise of Islam than previously understood. It was also here that one of the region's most important historical industries, pearl diving, began to emerge, gradually revealed through layers of soil, fragments of shells, and forgotten diving tools. Associate Professor of Archaeology Timothy Power from the United Arab Emirates University stated that this is the first physical evidence confirming the existence of ancient Khaliji pearl diving settlements, the direct ancestors of modern cities such as Dubai. He described homes built from coral stone and lime mortar, materials sourced directly from the surrounding environment, with tightly clustered layouts that reflect densely populated, year-round living conditions. This is in stark contrast to the seasonal diving camps commonly described in historical records. Inside many of the houses, archaeologists found clear evidence of pearl diving activity. Tiny pearls left behind in soil layers, along with tools used by divers, such as weighted stones that help them descend quickly to the seabed for short dives. This not only highlights the sophistication of ancient diving techniques, but also reveals the harsh and dangerous conditions faced by those who searched for these natural treasures. Statistically, only one pearl is found in every 10,000 oysters, meaning millions upon millions of shells were harvested, leaving behind massive ecological waste deposits that can still be felt underfoot by visitors walking on the island today. The pearl industry was not only an economic activity, but also a deeply rooted cultural symbol of the Persian Gulf region. According to the al-Quwain Department of Tourism, pearl diving has existed in this area for over 7,000 years. In the 19th century, in neighboring Abu Dhabi, nearly two-thirds of all men were involved in pearl diving, demonstrating the industry's central role in Gulf society before the discovery of oil. However, with the rise of cultured pearls and the global economic downturn following World War I, the natural pearl industry rapidly collapsed. This is why the discovery of the ancient pearl town is not only archaeologically significant, but also serves as a timely reminder. The UAE, once heavily shaped by oil wealth, now faces the challenge of transitioning its development model amid the global climate crisis and carbon reduction goals. The millions of discarded shells from ancient times stand as a powerful symbol of the environmental cost of resource extraction, a historical lesson about prosperity and ecological limits. With plans to develop Sinai Island into an archaeological tourism destination, the UAE is demonstrating a commitment to balancing preservation and sustainable development. More than just a tourist site, this ancient pearl town will tell the story of people who lived over 1,400 years ago. People who dove deep into the ocean, built towns on sand, and left behind a precious chapter of history beneath the blue waters of the Gulf. The oldest known carnivorous animal fossil on Earth revealed. Let's go back more than 500 million years to a time when there were no humans, no dinosaurs, and even complex life was just beginning to take shape. What do you imagine Earth was like back then? Gentle creatures? Primitive landscapes so beautiful they take your breath away? All of that is true, but only partially. Because in that ancient primordial ocean, there was already a first predator emerging, quietly, but playing a crucial role in the history of evolution. The story begins in a peaceful forest in Charnwood Forest, central England. A place that, at first glance, seems completely unrelated to an ancient ocean, right? But that's before you learn that it was here that British scientists discovered a fossil that immediately drew global attention. It belonged to a predatory organism from the Ediacaran period, dating back around 560 million years. Yes, you heard that right. 560 million years. A number almost impossible for the human mind to fully comprehend. This organism has been named Aurora Lumina Attenboroughi. The name may sound complex, but its meaning is beautiful. Dawn lantern, symbolizing the beginning of complex life. The species name Attenborough honors legendary naturalist David Attenborough, who has dedicated his life to telling the story of nature. But what makes this organism truly remarkable is not just its name. At 560 million years old, it is considered the oldest known carnivorous animal ever discovered, appearing roughly 20 million years earlier than the previous record holder. That means that very early in Earth's history, life was not only existing, it was already hunting. Doesn't that make you think? Even when life was still in its earliest stages, the game of survival had already begun. This organism measured about 8 inches in length, and its fossil imprint was preserved on a slab of siltstone. Around it, scientists also found other fossils, suggesting it was part of an ancient underwater ecosystem. Researchers believe the entire site was suddenly buried by volcanic lava flows and ash cascading from an underwater volcanic slope, a catastrophic event that accidentally froze a moment of history and time. From the fossil, scientists observed a branching body structure with dense tentacle-like appendages, likely its tools for capturing prey in the ancient ocean. These features led researchers to believe it may be an early ancestor of the modern Cnidaria group, which includes jellyfish, corals, and sea anemones. Familiar, right? The creatures we see today may have originated from an ancient predator like this. Another important detail is that this organism appears to have had a primitive skeletal structure embedded into the seafloor. Although the fossil is incomplete, it may represent one of the earliest known signs of skeletal development in the history of life. This suggests that evolution began laying its foundations much earlier than previously thought. So far, only a single fossil specimen has been discovered, but scientists believe that more specimens are still out there waiting to be found, missing pieces that could help us better understand the origins of complex life on Earth. And perhaps the most thought-provoking aspect is not its size or shape, but its meaning. A tiny organism that lived 560 million years ago may have the power to reshape how we understand our own origins. 742 skeletons from 9,000 years ago reveal humanity's first urban curse. My friends, have you ever wondered what life would have been like thousands of years ago, back when humans first began gathering in large numbers in what we might call proto-cities? Was it truly as peaceful as we imagine, or were there hidden tragedies that even today we are still unknowingly repeating? If not, Then join me on a journey to a remarkable place, Satal Hoyuk in Turkey, considered one of the oldest urban settlements in human history. What has sent chills around the world is the discovery of 742 skeletons found here, like a warning echoing across 9,000 years of history. The story begins around 7,100 BCE. At that time, Satal Hoyuk was far from a desolate land. It was an incredibly bustling settlement with a population that may have reached up to 8,000 people, a massive number for the Stone Age. This was also the period when humans began abandoning their nomadic, wandering lifestyle to settle permanently in one place. But just imagine this: when thousands of people are packed into a confined space, what happens? At Satal Hoyuk, houses were built so closely together that there were no conventional doorways. To enter a home, people had to climb onto the roof using a ladder and then descend inside. It may sound fascinating, but in reality, it reflects an extremely cramped way of life with little to no personal space. And that overcrowding brought a cascade of consequences. Scientific analysis revealed that 33% of the 742 skeletons showed signs of bacterial infections, indicating extremely unsanitary living conditions. In fact, traces of human and animal waste were found densely covering floors and walls. Just imagine how quickly disease could spread in such an environment. But it didn't stop there. Nutrition was also a serious issue. About 13% of women and 10% of men had severely damaged teeth, suggesting an imbalanced diet, one that relied too heavily on grains while lacking other essential food sources. Even more alarming, among the skeletons studied, about 25% in one sample group showed signs of skull fractures, blows strong enough to cause death. This indicates that violence was a frequent occurrence. When humans are pushed into scarcity, disease, and survival pressure, conflict becomes almost inevitable. As time went on, conditions only grew worse. Studies of leg bones show that people in later periods had to walk longer distances to find food, suggesting that nearby resources were gradually depleted. A once thriving settlement was now struggling just to survive day by day. All of these factors, overcrowding, pollution, disease, food shortages, and violence, combined into what could be described as an invisible curse, slowly eroding life at Satal Hoyuk. After about 1,000 years of existence, the settlement ultimately collapsed, leaving behind hundreds of skeletons as a chilling reminder. What's truly thought-provoking is that what happened at Satal Hoyuk 9,000 years ago closely mirrors the challenges modern cities face today: environmental pollution, high population density, disease, and the pressures of daily life. This raises a profound question. From the very beginning of urban civilization, did humanity have to pay a heavy price? And are we, perhaps, walking down the very same path our ancestors once stumbled upon? What do you think about this urban curse? Share your thoughts, because your answer might just be the key to helping us better understand not only the past, but also our future. The Dashka stone, a 120-million-year-old man-made map? Perhaps when you explore history, you've already realized one thing for sure. In humanity's journey to uncover unsolved mysteries, there are discoveries that make us pause and reflect, and others that continue to spark debate to this day. The mysterious Dashka stone, an artifact discovered in 1999 in the Ural Mountains of Russia, is a perfect example of this. At first glance, it may not seem unusual, but what makes it truly extraordinary is a shocking hypothesis. It could be a map dating back as far as 120 million years. Yes, 120 million years, a time when humans didn't even exist. So who could have created it? To begin answering that question, we have to go back to July 21st, 1999. On that day, a team of archaeologists from Bashkir State University was conducting research in the Ural Mountains. During their work, they unexpectedly discovered a massive stone slab. The stone measures about 58 inches tall, 42 inches wide, and 6.3 inches thick, with a weight of nearly 1 ton. Its sheer size alone is enough to draw attention, but the real shock lies on its surface. Upon closer inspection, researchers realized that the patterns carved into the stone were not random. They resembled an extremely detailed topographic map, accurately depicting the region of Bashkiria, part of the Ural Mountains. The scale of the map is considered almost perfect, about 0.4 inches on the stone, corresponding to roughly 0.7 miles in reality. Even at this point, something already feels unusual, doesn't it? The leader of the research team, Alexander Chuvirov, even named the stone Dashka after his granddaughter, who was born on the very day of its discovery. But what astonished him and his colleagues even more was the structure of the stone itself. Unlike a natural rock, the Dashka stone appears to be composed of three distinct layers of material. The bottom layer, about 7 inches thick, resembles a kind of cement or ceramic compound made from dolomite. The second layer is thinner, about 1 inch, and contains diopside glass rich in silicon, a highly complex material. The top layer, only a few millimeters thick, is believed to be a special coating that may help protect the surface or even reflect light. Simply put, this does not look like a natural stone. It appears to be a deliberately manufactured object. And that's not all. On this map, scientists have also identified traces of large-scale engineering structures, such as canals stretching up to 7,500 miles, dams and symbols resembling hieroglyphic writing that remain undeciphered to this day. Some experts even suggest these symbols may be related to ancient forms of Chinese characters. What's even more intriguing is that the terrain on the Dashka stone appears to be represented from an aerial perspective, almost like a satellite image. And this raises an even bigger question. Who or what could have created such a map from that vantage point in ancient times? To determine its age, researchers analyzed fossilized shells embedded within the stone. One of them may be as old as 500 million years, while another is estimated to be around 120 million years old. From this, the theory of a 120 million-year-old map began to emerge. However, things are not that simple. While some scientists support this idea, others remain skeptical. They argue that the presence of ancient shells within the stone does not necessarily mean the entire artifact is of the same age. Some estimates suggest the stone may actually be around 3,000 years old, still ancient but far more plausible than hundreds of millions of years. Furthermore, some researchers believe that the map-like patterns could simply be natural formations, cracks and textures in the rock that coincidentally resemble geographic features. In other words, what we are seeing might just be the human mind connecting random details into a meaningful image. So what exactly is the Dashka stone? Is it evidence of an ancient civilization far more advanced than we can imagine? Or is it simply a natural phenomenon that has been exaggerated? Can you answer that question? Do you believe this is truly an ancient map, or just a strange coincidence of nature? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's explore this mystery together. A 1,500-year-old set of knives in Hadrianopolis, revealing a forgotten secret of ancient animal husbandry. You know, in archaeological excavations, sometimes the most surprising discoveries aren't gold or treasure, but rather ordinary, everyday objects. Small items that hold within them long and detailed stories about the lives of ancient people. A powerful example of this is a set of 1,500-year-old knives discovered in the ancient city of Hadrianopolis, located in northern Turkey. This place was once a bustling settlement that spanned multiple historical periods, from the late Roman era to the early Byzantine period. During excavations in an area known as the Hammam Bath Complex, archaeologists unexpectedly uncovered this knife set. At first glance, it may sound quite ordinary, a few old knives and a sharpening stone. But don't underestimate it, because when the pieces of history were put back together, they revealed a vivid picture of life more than 1,000 years ago. The excavation team, led by Professor Ersin Çelikbaş, discovered 4 iron knives with similar designs but different sizes, found alongside a traditional sharpening stone known locally as a koşare taşı. What's remarkable is that when they were first found, the knives were not intact. They had shattered into around 250 small fragments, scattered across what is believed to have been the kitchen area of the complex. At this point, many might think, so what's left to study? But through meticulous laboratory work, archaeologists carefully pieced together each fragment, successfully reconstructing the original shapes of the knives. And once they were brought back to life, the real story began. What makes this discovery special is not just the knives themselves, but the fact that they were found together in the same context. In archaeology, discovering a complete set of tools like this is extremely rare. It's like finding not just a single puzzle piece, but an entire picture still in its frame. According to expert analysis, the presence of these tools together suggests they were used for a very specific purpose, related to animal husbandry and food processing. In simpler terms, this may have been the toolkit of people who butchered and processed livestock more than 1,500 years ago. This finding also aligns with earlier archaeological evidence from Hadrianopolis, indicating that the area once had a thriving economy based on livestock farming. In other words, the people here weren't just surviving day by day, they had developed a relatively organized and stable food production system. And the story doesn't end there, because the sharpening stone found alongside the knives adds an especially intriguing detail. This type of stone became well known during the later Ottoman period, commonly used for sharpening cutting tools. However, its presence alongside a 1,500-year-old knife set suggests that local people had been utilizing this resource much earlier than historical records indicate. In other words, techniques we might consider more modern may have actually existed far earlier than we once thought. Based on stratigraphic analysis, scientists determined that the knife set dates back to around the 5th or 6th century CE during the early Byzantine period. This was also a time when Hadrianopolis was flourishing, with relatively stable economic and social conditions. From all this evidence, researchers arrived at a thought-provoking conclusion. Livestock farming in this region has continued for approximately 1,500 years, from ancient times all the way to the present day. A remarkable level of continuity, wouldn't you agree? Not only that, but the ancient city of Hadrianopolis has also been nicknamed the Zeugma of the Black Sea, thanks to the stunning mosaics discovered there. This shows that the city was not only economically developed, but also culturally rich. Looking back at the entire story, we can see that sometimes the simplest objects, like a knife or a sharpening stone, can tell us incredibly powerful stories about human history. Isn't that fascinating? A 2,000-year-old Iron Age warrior's tomb and a mysterious shield of unexpected value. You know, history is fascinating. Sometimes it isn't found in the books we usually read. It lies quietly beneath our feet, waiting for a sluicious strike of a shovel to bring it back to light. And the story I'm about to tell you begins exactly like that. Not with a grand excavation, but at an ordinary construction site in East Yorkshire. In 2018, while workers were carrying out routine construction work at the site, they unexpectedly uncovered an ancient burial belonging to Celtic culture, dating back roughly 2,000 years. They quickly reported it to local authorities, and before long, an archaeological team was dispatched to investigate. Once archaeologists began their work, they immediately realized this was no ordinary grave. At the center of the burial lay the remains of a remarkable warrior, most likely a powerful commander. This man was not buried alone. He was interred with full armor, weapons, provisions, and most notably, a chariot pulled by 2 horses. The horses were buried alongside him, but in a strikingly unusual way. They were positioned standing upright, as if still ready to charge forward. The image is chilling. It feels almost like a ritual farewell, one in which the commander would continue his journey into the afterlife. Further analysis revealed that the tomb dates to approximately 320 to 174 BCE, a time when Celtic tribes dominated the British Isles. This period is also associated with the Aris culture, known for its distinctive burial practices, including chariot burials. But the story doesn't end there. Surrounding the central grave, archaeologists discovered several additional burials containing the remains of younger warriors. The number of skeletons was so significant that if assembled, they could form a small but formidable army. This led researchers to believe that the man at the center was not just a warrior, but a highly respected leader, possibly the commander of a powerful force. He may not have died in battle, but from old age. Yet the items buried with him suggest a life shaped by countless brutal conflicts. After nearly a year of careful restoration, particularly of the weapons, British archaeologists recently concluded that these are among the most significant artifacts discovered in the current millennium. The most valuable artifact is undoubtedly the shield placed beside the commander's remains. Initially, the shield was found in severely damaged condition. The leather and wooden handle had almost completely decayed after centuries underground. But once restored, its true value began to emerge. The shield measures about 29 inches in length and was crafted by artisans of the La Tène culture, a renowned artistic tradition of ancient Europe typically associated with elites and royalty. At its center is a prominent raised boss, flanked by intricate triple spiral motifs. When intact, the shield would have displayed a brilliant golden sheen from its bronze surface, bordered by unique scallop-like patterns. To this day, no other artifact from the European Iron Age has been found with a similar design. But what makes this shield even more extraordinary are the marks of battle. On its surface, researchers identified a clear slash mark, evidence that it was not merely decorative but actually used in combat. In fact, the shield shows signs of having been repaired and reinforced multiple times, as if it had accompanied its owner through battle after battle. In the end, it was buried as an inseparable part of the commander's life. With all these qualities, the shield has been recognized as one of the most important Celtic artworks in Britain in the 3rd millennium. It has even been compared to the legendary Wandsworth shield, currently displayed at the British Museum. Looking back at the entire story, we realize that an ancient tomb is not just a resting place for the dead, it is a gateway to a lost world. What do you think? Or do you see it differently? The temple that rises and sinks with the sea in India. Do you believe that somewhere in this world, there exists a sacred temple that disappears beneath the sea every day, only to rise again like a miracle? It may sound like something out of science fiction, but it is completely real in India. This is the Stambeshwar Mahadev Temple, also known by its unique name, the Sinking Temple. It sits quietly along the coast of the Arabian Sea in the town of Kavi Kamboi, in the state of Gujarat. At around 150 years old, Stambeshwar Mahadev Temple is a sacred shrine dedicated to Shiva, where faith and nature intertwine in a truly mesmerizing way, captivating thousands of visitors. Nestled between the Gulf of Kambat and the Arabian Sea, this small temple is not architecturally elaborate. It is simple, modest, and deeply spiritual. Yet that simplicity is exactly what gives it a unique charm, making it a must-visit destination for Hindu devotees and curious travelers alike. You can easily reach the temple by car or taxi from Vadodara, which is only about 47 miles away. If you prefer traveling by train, Vadodara railway station is the nearest stop, making the journey quite convenient. According to ancient Hindu legend, the Stambeshwar Mahadev Temple was built by Kartikeya, the son of Shiva. The story begins with a battle between Kartikeya and the demon Tarakasura. After defeating the demon, Kartikeya did not feel pride. Instead, he was burdened with guilt for taking a life. Seeing this, Vishnu reassured him that his actions were necessary to protect humanity from evil. However, seeking redemption and inner peace, Kartikeya followed Vishnu's guidance and built this temple as a prayer for forgiveness to the universe and the divine. What makes Stambeshwar Mahadev truly legendary is a remarkable natural phenomenon that occurs every single day. When the tide rises, the temple is completely submerged beneath the sea, leaving nothing but a vast stretch of water and a few floating flowers, offerings left behind by devotees. But when the tide recedes, the temple slowly re-emerges. First the walls appear, then the steps, and finally the sacred Shiva Lingam, standing over 4 feet tall, rises once again as if by a miracle. This daily cycle of submerging and reappearing is not just a natural event, it also carries deep symbolic meaning in Hindu culture, representing rebirth and purification. To fully experience this wonder, it's best to spend an entire day here. Early morning is the ideal time to meditate in the peaceful atmosphere, just as the temple reappears from beneath the tide. You can walk around the site, listening to the sound of the waves blending with whispered prayers, creating a truly calming experience. By midday, you can enjoy a meal at nearby restaurants located less than a third of a mile from the parking area, or choose to partake in free meals offered by the temple for devotees. Then, the miracle happens again. As the sea rises, the water gradually covers the temple walls, slowly submerging every corner. It's a breathtaking moment, like watching the entire temple quietly sink into the ocean, carrying with it a sense of sacredness and reverence as night falls over this mystical place. It is precisely this combination of powerful natural forces, moving spiritual legends, and the quiet beauty of ancient architecture that has made Stambeshwar Mahadev Temple one of the most unique religious destinations in the world. A place where humans, gods, and the sea come together in an unforgettable spiritual dance. Sue, the most complete T-Rex skeleton in the world and the story that shook the scientific community. Hey, imagine this. One day you're walking through a barren landscape and suddenly you notice a massive bone sticking out of a cliff. What would you do? Ignore it, thinking it's just a rock? Or stop, dig a little deeper, and possibly touch one of the greatest discoveries in history? If you're not sure what you do in that moment, then let's go back to the summer of 1990. Because that's exactly when a fossil hunter named Susan Hendrickson made such a discovery. At the time, she was exploring an area near the town of Faith, South Dakota, in the United States. Everything seemed routine, just another field trip, until she noticed large bone fragments emerging from the ground. At first, she thought it might be an ordinary find, but driven by curiosity, she took a closer look and realized something extraordinary. These were the remains of a Tyrannosaurus rex, the legendary predator that once dominated Earth millions of years ago, more commonly known as T-Rex. But this skeleton had a special name, Sue, named after the woman who discovered it. And here's what makes Sue truly remarkable. It's not just that it belongs to one of the coolest dinosaurs ever, it's the nearly unimaginable level of preservation. Susan reported that despite being buried for about 65 million years, more than 90% of the skeleton remained intact. Just think about that. For 65 million years, enduring countless natural changes and yet still preserved so completely. Isn't that an incredible rarity? Because of this, Sue was quickly recognized as the most complete T-Rex skeleton ever discovered in the world. But Sue's journey was far from smooth. Shortly after the discovery, the Black Hills Institute of Geological Research paid $5,000 to the landowner for excavation rights. The skeleton was then transported to a laboratory for cleaning and study. Initially, there were plans to build a non-profit museum to display Sue. However, an unexpected legal dispute broke out over ownership of the land where Sue was found. The situation quickly became complicated and dragged on for years. Finally, in 1997, Sue was put up for auction, and the price shocked the world. $8.36 million, a record-breaking figure that made Sue the most expensive dinosaur fossil in history. The winning bidder was the Field Museum in Chicago, and since 2000, Sue has been permanently housed there, becoming the museum's biggest star. If you ever have the chance to stand in front of Sue in real life, you'll understand why it leaves millions of visitors in awe. You see, Sue stands nearly 13 feet tall at the hips and stretches 42 feet in length, almost as long as a bus. The skull alone measures about 5 feet and weighs over 2,000 pounds, with 58 razor-sharp teeth, some as long as an adult human forearm. Just imagining it is enough to feel the intensity, right? But Sue isn't just impressive in size, it also holds immense scientific value. Thanks to its exceptional preservation, scientists discovered that T-Rex had an incredibly strong sense of smell, powerful enough to detect carcasses from great distances. This supports the theory that T-Rex was not only a predator, but also a scavenger in ancient ecosystems. And there's more. Sue is also the first T-Rex skeleton found with a clavicle, collarbone, a small detail but extremely important. It provides further evidence supporting the idea that modern birds are direct descendants of carnivorous dinosaurs like T-Rex. Isn't that fascinating? That a small bird you see outside your home today might carry the genetic legacy of a creature that once ruled the earth. Today, Sue is more than just a fossil. It has become a symbol of paleontology. Every day, thousands of visitors from around the world come to the Field Museum just to witness this legend with their own eyes. If you ever have the chance, don't miss the opportunity to see its sheer size and presence in person. The mysterious triangle object in Nevada, a crashed UFO, or an unexpected truth. My friend, have you ever come across an image online that feels more and more off the longer you look at it? Something that seems completely ordinary at first, but when placed in the right context, suddenly becomes deeply mysterious? If not, let me tell you a story that began exactly like that, from a seemingly harmless video that ended up stirring the entire online community. Back in 2018, a user was exploring the Earth's surface using Google Earth. While scanning the landscape from above, they unexpectedly spotted a strange object in the middle of the Nevada desert. At first glance, some people might think it's just a shadow or a patch of land with a different color. But no, this object had a clearly defined triangular shape, standing out sharply against the barren desert. And strangely, it was precisely this too clear shape that made it even harder to explain. In the video that was shared, the object appears isolated in a vast, empty desert, with no visible roads or structures nearby. It doesn't resemble a natural rock formation, nor does it look like anything familiar we typically see. And that's when the internet's imagination began to run wild. Many people believed it could be an alien spacecraft that crashed on Earth long ago and was later hidden in the desert. Some comments even suggested that it might be connected to secret operations that governments have never publicly disclosed. At this point, you're probably starting to feel curious too, right? But what made the story even more explosive was the object's location. It lies not far from the infamous Area 51, a place long associated with countless conspiracy theories about UFOs and extraterrestrials. And when you combine those two elements, a mysterious object near Area 51, it's almost guaranteed to spark massive attention. Some users took things even further. Using measurement tools within Google Earth, they estimated the size of the object. The result was shocking. Each side of the triangle measured about 4,140 feet. Just imagine that, a triangular object with each side over 3/4 of a mile long, sitting in the middle of the desert. That's enormous. This detail made many people even more convinced that it couldn't be something ordinary. Some even argued that it looked like a deliberately designed structure, rather than a natural formation. However, not everyone was convinced by the alien spacecraft theory. Skeptics suggested that it could simply be an abandoned man-made structure, or perhaps part of a classified military project. Others proposed that it might just be a visual artifact, caused by camera angles, lighting, or the limited resolution of satellite imagery. To be honest, with images this unclear, determining exactly what the object is becomes nearly impossible. And perhaps that's exactly what makes it so fascinating. You see, sometimes what intrigues people the most isn't the answer, but the unanswered question itself. After being posted, the video quickly gained over 7,000 views, along with a flood of comments debating back and forth. Some believed it, others were skeptical, and everyone had their own explanation. As for me, I have to admit, when I first saw the image, I felt a slight chill down my spine. Not because I was certain it was a UFO, but because of the feeling of standing in front of something I simply couldn't understand. So what about you? Do you think it's truly an alien spacecraft, a secret human-made structure, or just a strange trick of nature and technology? And do you believe extraterrestrial life exists? Skeleton. Inside a mysterious bronze pot in Vietnam, revealing traces of an ancient leader. My friends, our world is truly strange. Some historical secrets aren't buried dozens of feet underground. Sometimes they lie just a few feet below the surface, waiting thousands of years for someone to accidentally uncover them. And no, I'm not exaggerating, because in Vietnam, specifically in Lao Cai province, a place that seems very familiar, a discovery was made that left archaeologists momentarily stunned. At the beginning of 2018, while expanding the area behind a mining station at an apatite factory in Lao Cai, a bulldozer working as usual suddenly struck something hard. A loud clank rang out and a bronze object shattered, scattering ancient artifacts such as axes and spearheads across the ground. The team from the Lao Cai Provincial Museum quickly arrived at the scene. Construction was immediately halted and the site was preserved, because everyone sensed that this was no ordinary discovery. And they were right. As the soil was carefully cleared away, an ancient tomb gradually came into view. But what shocked everyone the most was the coffin. It wasn't made of wood, it wasn't made of stone. It was a bronze pot, shaped somewhat like a drum, placed upside down with human remains inside. Just hearing that alone sounds puzzling, doesn't it? The pot measures about 24 inches tall with a mouth diameter of about 21 inches. It has 4 handles and a flat base, features characteristic of the Dong Sun culture, which was widespread in northern Vietnam and also found in regions like Yunnan, Guizhou, and Guangxi in China. Although the pot had been broken due to mechanical impact, researchers were still able to reconstruct it almost completely. But what puzzled them even more was the skeleton inside. The hip bones indicated that this was an adult. But think about it. How could an entire adult body fit into such a small pot? Moreover, the skeleton was incomplete, and the bones were no longer arranged according to their original anatomical positions. From this, an important conclusion was reached. This was a secondary burial. In other words, the individual had first been buried normally. Then, after a period of time, the remains were collected and placed into this bronze pot as a second form of burial. It may sound simple, but behind it lies an entire system of beliefs, ideas about death and the afterlife that we still do not fully understand today. Inside the pot, archaeologists also found 4 bronze axes with curved blades, carefully arranged along the sides and base. These were not ordinary tools. They were often associated with individuals of high social status. The tomb was located on a low mound near a small stream. Notably, this area, along the Red River in Laokai, has long been known for numerous elite burials from the Dongsun culture. This suggests that the discovery is not an isolated case, but part of a broader core region associated with ancient leaders. Researchers also noted that this type of bronze pot closely resembles those found in burial sites of the Western O group in what is now southern China. This points to cultural connections between regions and possibly ties to the southward expansion of the ancient Aulak people. And when mentioning Aulak, one cannot ignore Duong Vuong, a legendary ruler associated with the mysterious early formation of the nation. No one can say with certainty who this tomb belonged to, but everything that has been found, from the bronze artifacts and geographic location to the burial style, suggests that this may have been the resting place of a person of great importance in that society. Interestingly, even after expanding excavations in the surrounding area, archaeologists have found no additional clear traces. The tomb seems to stand alone, as if it has been quietly guarding its story for thousands of years. You see, history is not always loud or grand. Sometimes, it simply lies silently beneath the earth, waiting for the right moment to be told. So what do you think? Was the person inside that bronze pot a leader, a warrior, or someone whose name history has long forgotten? Share your thoughts, because perhaps your answer might make this journey of discovery even more fascinating. 33 skulls in shallow graves in Mexico, revealing a bloody war between drug cartels. In a desolate land where the sun scorches dry bushes and the wind carries the faint, lingering scent of death, Mexican police uncovered a scene that sent chills around the world. At least 33 human skulls were discovered in a mass burial site in Narit, western Mexico, one of the country's most notorious hotspots for cartel-related violence. The skulls were scattered across 3 shallow graves, crudely dug as if the perpetrators had no need to hide their actions. As if this was just another part of a massive purge that has become a grim new normal in the region. The story began on January 17th, when a Mexican government official confirmed to the media that 33 skulls had been found, all concentrated in a single area. What made it even more disturbing was the possibility that the number could rise. The initial investigation had started on January 13th, after signs of disturbed soil and tips from local residents raised suspicions. As investigators carefully removed layer after layer of earth, the truth emerged like a silent nightmare. The victims' identities remain unknown, and the motive behind the mass burial is still a major question. However, given the social context of Nayarit, many experts believe the case is likely linked to violence between organized crime groups, particularly the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, a name that has been spreading fear across western Mexico. This is one of the most powerful and brutal drug trafficking organizations today, locked in a bloody struggle for dominance with the Sinaloa cartel, once led by the infamous drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. The relentless conflict between these groups pushed Mexico's homicide rate in 2017 to over 20,000 cases, a record-breaking number that raised serious concerns about the country slipping into a large-scale, undeclared internal war. Nayarit, located along the Pacific coast, serves as a strategic transit point for international drug trafficking routes. As a result, it has become a violent battleground for competing cartels. In fact, the state's own attorney general was arrested in San Diego for alleged involvement in drug trafficking, further exposing how deeply organized crime has infiltrated public institutions. In such a context, the discovery of a mass grave is no longer shocking. What truly matters is what it reveals: the sheer scale and chilling brutality of a war being fought in the shadows. Can you imagine it? 33 skulls, no bodies, no identities, no one left to seek justice. Each skull represents an untold story, a person who once lived, perhaps a father, a mother, a child. And now they remain as silent evidence buried beneath the earth. How were they killed? Why were they buried here? Were they victims of a targeted purge, or innocent people caught in a deadly power struggle? These questions remain unanswered. At the time, Mexico's president Enrique Peña Nieto acknowledged that violence and crime were spiraling out of control, despite heavy deployment of military and police forces. The harsh reality is that, no matter the efforts, Cartels often operate like shadow governments, controlling territory, finances, and even law enforcement in certain areas. This is what allows massacres like this to occur unnoticed for long periods, until a shovel, in the hands of investigators or even archaeologists, accidentally uncovers the truth. The story of the 33 skulls is not just a shocking case. It is a stark reminder that modern wars are not only fought with armies and weapons, but also through silent purges, where people are buried without even a record of their existence. And sometimes it is not the police or the courts who bring justice first, but those who uncover the past, exposing the truth hidden beneath the soil. So when you watch footage of the excavation, don't just see cold white bones. Try to imagine the lives behind them and ask yourself, could tragedies like this be prevented if history itself were not buried along with its victims? 2. Incorrupt bodies, preserved for centuries that leave scientists baffled. Throughout the course of human history, there have been many moments when people stood in awe at bodies that refused to decompose after decades or even centuries. Behind these cases lies an ongoing journey of discovery, filled with countless questions about life, death, and mysteries that seem to lie beyond the reach of modern science. Now, let's open a door through time and step into two of the most extraordinary and sacred stories ever recorded. The incorrupt body of Pope Pius V, preserved for over 4 centuries, and the remarkably intact remains of Venerable Minya Duke, found nearly 30 years after burial. Two individuals, two different faiths, yet both seem to touch the mysterious threshold of physical preservation after death. Let us begin in the heart of Christianity, Vatican City, where the body of Pope Pius V remains intact, showing no signs of decay, even though he passed away in 1572. Canonized on May 22, 1712, his incorrupt body has astonished not only the faithful but also scientists. There was no embalming process, no chemical preservation, yet his body appears as if in a deep, peaceful sleep for more than 4 centuries. Is this a miracle, or a sign of divine grace granted by God to a worthy soul? Pius V, the 225th Pope, was known for his compassion and virtue. During his papacy from 1566 to 1572, he stood out not only for his intellect, but also for his humility and dedication to the poor, the sick, and efforts toward global peace. Because of his lifelong devotion, many believers see the preservation of his body as a mark of holiness, a symbol of the connection between heaven and earth. Today, his remains are housed in a silver and glass shrine at Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome, where thousands of pilgrims visit each year to pay their respects. But just when one might think such a phenomenon is unique, another astonishing story emerges from Quang Ngai Province, Vietnam. There, the remains of Venerable Minya Duke were found intact after 27 years buried underground, despite the region's humid climate and frequent flooding. Even more remarkably, although the wooden coffin had completely decayed over time, the monk's robes remained intact. His skeletal joints were still firmly connected, hardened almost like stone, and his entire body emitted a faint golden hue. How could this be explained? Venerable Minya Duke, also known as Thich Minh Duc, was born in 1901 into a scholarly family. He lived a humble life devoted to rigorous spiritual practice and was known for his deep knowledge of Buddhist scriptures as well as traditional medicine. He was not only a devoted monk, but also a healer, a revolutionary involved in resistance movements, and a teacher to generations of Buddhist followers. Before his passing in 1985, he reportedly foresaw his own death, calmly instructing his disciples before peacefully leaving this world on a quiet night. Yet no one expected that nearly 30 years later, when his remains were exhumed, his body would appear almost exactly as it had been at the time of burial, leaving locals, monks, and researchers speechless. What makes this case even more fascinating is that, unlike Pope Pius V, Venerable Minya Duke's body was not embalmed or preserved using any special substances. So what preserved it? Could it be the result of a lifetime of disciplined spiritual practice, thousands of hours of meditation, countless recitations, and complete purification of body, mind, and spirit? Stories of incorrupt bodies are not merely religious or mystical records. They reflect something deeply rooted in human spiritual culture, where the belief in absolute purity may allow the physical body to transcend natural laws. Some believe this is evidence of ultimate enlightenment. Others call it a miracle, and some suggest it may be due to environmental factors or scientific mechanisms not yet fully understood. But regardless of the explanation, standing before such preserved bodies often causes people to pause and reflect on life, on death, and on the mysteries that lie beyond the limits of human knowledge. So what do you think? Is this a rare biological phenomenon, the result of lifelong spiritual discipline, or the work of something beyond our understanding? And perhaps most importantly, will science one day have the tools to fully explain these mysteries? 3,000-year-old woman skeleton and the chilling truth about foot amputation punishment in ancient China. Hey, imagine this. What if one day, beneath layers of seemingly peaceful soil, people uncovered a skeleton that had rested there for over 3,000 years, and from those very bones emerged a haunting story about a brutal punishment from ancient times? What would you think? Would it send chills down your spine? If not, then come with me to an area near Baoji, in Shanxi Province, China, a place that was once the heart of the ancient Zhou civilization. This is not only a land rich in history, but also known as the home of bronze, where archaeologists have discovered countless bronze vessels, oracle bones, and invaluable ancient tombs. It was here, during an excavation in 1999, that archaeologists uncovered the skeleton of a woman. At the time, however, it was almost forgotten, as all attention was focused on more valuable artifacts. No one imagined that this very skeleton held a terrifying secret from the past. It wasn't until many years later, when modern analytical technology had advanced significantly, that researchers at Peking University returned to re-examine the remains. And this time, things were no longer so simple. Under X-ray analysis, they determined that the skeleton belonged to a woman between 30 and 35 years old. But the most shocking detail was this: her right foot had been completely amputated, and not due to an accident. At first, scientists considered various medical possibilities such as diabetes, leprosy, cancer, or even injuries caused by frostbite or severe burns. But after carefully analyzing the bone structure, density, and the markings around the severed area, all medical explanations were ruled out. Upon closer examination, they noticed that the tibia and fibula showed very distinctive deformation, damage that was not caused by disease, but by a forceful and deliberate act. And from that point on, a chilling hypothesis emerged. This was not a medical procedure, it was a punishment. According to archaeologists, historical records from ancient China describe a system known as the Five Punishments, a set of harsh penalties that lasted for nearly 1,000 years before ending around 200 BCE. This system included tattooing the face, cutting off the nose, amputating the feet, castration, and execution. Among them, the punishment of foot amputation, known as yue, was considered one of the most horrifying, instilling fear in all who knew of it. What's both fascinating and unsettling is that this punishment was not applied equally to everyone. Ancient records suggest that those who committed lesser crimes would have their left foot cut off, while more serious offenders would lose their right foot. In the case of the woman discovered in Shanxi, researchers believe she fell into the category of serious offenders. Researcher Li Nan from Peking University stated that, by comparing the skeletal data with engravings on bronze artifacts found in nearby tombs, they are almost certain this is a typical example of the yue punishment, and possibly the earliest recorded case ever discovered. But what makes this story even more haunting is not just the brutality of the punishment, but the silence that lasted for thousands of years. A person who once lived, breathed, and existed, now reduced to a skeleton telling her story after more than 3 millennia. It really makes you realize, without modern technology, this mystery might have remained buried forever. The ancient world was never as gentle as we might imagine. It was far more terrifying than that, wasn't it? 3,000-year-old sacrificial skeleton discovered in England. You know, ancient history has always been fascinating and mysterious in its own way. Some stories don't need noise or drama to send chills down your spine. Sometimes, all it takes is a layer of soil being turned over, and the secrets of the past rise up in ways no one could have expected. And in the area of Childrey Warren in Oxfordshire, England, a discovery like that took place. At first, no one imagined that a group of workers installing a water pipeline would uncover something connected to history from thousands of years ago. But when their first strikes broke into the deeper layers of Earth, they unintentionally opened a doorway back nearly 3,000 years. Beneath the ground lay an ancient burial site where dozens of human skeletons were found in positions unlike any typical form of burial. The silence of millennia was suddenly broken, replaced by growing curiosity and an unsettling sense of unease spreading among archaeologists. Experts were immediately called to the scene. Once they began their investigation, they confirmed that there were at least 26 human skeletons, dating from the Iron Age through the Roman period. But what made this site truly remarkable wasn't the number. It was the way the bodies had been arranged. There were clear signs suggesting these were not natural deaths. Among them, one case stood out in particular. It was the skeleton of a woman. Her body was discovered with both legs severed and carefully placed beside her, while her arms were bound tightly behind her head. That position alone is enough to make anyone shudder, as it bears the unmistakable mark of a forced ritual rather than a normal burial. Through further analysis, archaeologists determined that the skeleton dates back around 3,000 years, placing it in the Iron Age, a time when human life was deeply influenced by beliefs, rituals, and mystical traditions. From there, experts began to put forward a shocking hypothesis. This could very well be evidence of human sacrifice. According to Neil Holbrook, director of the Cotswold Archaeology Institute, this discovery is not just a burial site. It serves as a window into the belief systems and superstitions of the communities that lived in Oxfordshire before the Roman conquest of the region. What's also intriguing is that around the burial area, archaeologists found numerous traces of daily life, from ancient house foundations and animal remains to everyday objects like pottery, cutting tools, and even finely decorated combs. Together, these elements paint a picture that is both familiar and mysterious, offering a glimpse into how people once lived. But if the story ended in England, it might not be chilling enough, because in reality, similar discoveries have been recorded all over the world. In Peru, archaeologists once uncovered a ritual site dating back to the 15th century, containing the remains of more than 140 children, a number that is almost impossible to comprehend when you think about the brutality of ancient rituals. In Mexico, beneath modern cities, buried skulls have been discovered, linked to the sacrificial practices of the Aztec civilization. At the Templo Mayor, excavations have revealed numerous remains directly associated with these rituals, a haunting reminder of a past filled with bloodshed and extreme belief systems. And it doesn't stop in the Americas. Even in Israel, archaeologists have uncovered a rare gold treasure along with a 900-year-old gold earring, found in an area where a massacre took place during the Crusades. All of this points to one undeniable truth. Human history has never truly been as peaceful as we might imagine. Returning to the burial site in England, what troubles researchers is not just the question of what happened, but also why it happened. What kind of belief could be strong enough to drive people to carry out such rituals? And how thin is the line between faith and cruelty? Unfortunately, to this day, all of these questions remain unanswered mysteries. 3,400-year-old skull that underwent brain surgery. My friend, what if I told you that more than 3,000 years ago, at a time when humans had no modern machines, no anesthesia like we have today, they were already capable of performing incredibly complex brain surgeries? Would you believe it? It may sound hard to accept, but the story I'm about to share is living proof of this. In fact, it has even forced scientists to rethink much of what we thought we knew about ancient medicine. The story takes place at Tel Megiddo, an important archaeological site in what is now Israel, once a major city-state of the Canaanites during the Bronze Age. There, archaeologists discovered a remarkable tomb, but what surprised them wasn't the number of artifacts inside. As is often the case, it was the presence of two skeletons buried side by side, along with a secret hidden within the skull of one of them. These were the remains of two brothers who lived around the 15th century BCE, about 3,400 years ago. They were laid to rest next to each other, as if even death could not separate their bond. But when researchers took a closer look, they noticed something astonishing. On the skull of the older brother, a man estimated to be between 21 and 46 years old, there were 4 intersecting cuts forming an almost square-shaped hole, about approximately 1.2 inches in diameter. This was not the result of natural trauma. It was evidence of surgery. Yes, you heard that right. A cranial surgery known as trepanation, one of the oldest medical techniques known to humanity. The method itself is enough to send chills down your spine. Ancient practitioners would drill, cut, or scrape away part of the skull until reaching the protective membrane surrounding the brain. Today, this technique is sometimes used in specific cases involving head trauma. But thousands of years ago, people believed it could also release evil spirits or cure mysterious illnesses. Returning to the two brothers at Tel Megiddo, scientists continued their analysis and discovered that both had suffered from a long-term debilitating illness that caused their bones to deteriorate and deform over time. This suggests they had lived with disease for many years. The younger brother died at a relatively young age, likely in his late teens or early 20s. As for the older brother, despite undergoing the cranial procedure, he most likely did not survive long afterward. However, there is another remarkable detail. Both skeletons were buried alongside finely crafted pottery and high-quality food offerings. This suggests they were not ordinary individuals, but likely belonged to a higher social class at the time. And this leads to a compelling hypothesis. Perhaps it was their social status that gave them access to such an advanced and unusual form of treatment. According to researcher Rachel Kalisher from Brown University, all the evidence suggests that this trepanation procedure was likely an attempt to save the patient's life, rather than a purely spiritual ritual. What's especially fascinating is the technique itself. Instead of drilling a circular hole, as seen in many other cases, ancient practitioners made precise cuts into the skull and carefully removed sections of bone, creating a fairly accurate square opening. This indicates that they were not acting randomly. They possessed a certain level of skill and understanding. At this point, you might be wondering, how could ancient people perform such a dangerous procedure without modern technology? That's exactly what makes this discovery so extraordinary. While trepanation has been found in many parts of the world, evidence like this in the Near East, especially at sites like Tel Megiddo, is extremely rare. To date, only about a dozen similar cases have been recorded. This makes each discovery like this incredibly valuable, helping scientists better understand how ancient people faced disease, with belief, experience, and sometimes even sheer risk. So in the end, this is not just an archaeological discovery, it's a reminder that humans in every era have always sought ways to fight death in ways that still leave us in awe today. What about you? If you had lived in that time, would you have dared to undergo such a brain surgery for a chance to survive? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. 3,000-year-old axe made from a meteorite that stunned archaeologists. An axe more than 3,000 years old, but the material it's made from doesn't even belong to Earth. Sounds unbelievable, right? But it's real. And what's even more surprising is that it wasn't discovered during some grand archaeological excavation. Instead, it all began in a very ordinary situation. A local farmer, while panning for gold in Kalimantan, an area in present-day Indonesia, accidentally came across a strange object. At first, he didn't think much of it. He simply kept it as an interesting find. Over time, the artifact became part of his personal collection, alongside other items such as traditional stone axes and ancient bead necklaces belonging to the Dayak people, the indigenous inhabitants of Kalimantan, Borneo. But eventually, that seemingly ordinary object caught the attention of experts. And when archaeologists finally examined the axe the farmer had found, they could hardly believe their eyes. In front of them was a cone-shaped axe dating back more than 3,000 years to the Bronze Age. But the real shock wasn't its shape or age, it was the material. According to experts, the axe appears to have been made from metal originating from a meteorite, something from outer space. Now think about that for a moment. Around 3,000 years ago, when humans were primarily using stone, copper, or bronze, the existence of an object made from metal that fell from the sky is astonishing. That's exactly why this discovery has challenged many previous assumptions. Researchers once believed that ancient communities in Indonesia mainly used materials available locally, but this axe suggests they may have achieved a far more advanced level of metalworking, not just for practical use, but possibly for symbolic, ritualistic, or social status purposes. According to Hartatik, a member of the cultural heritage expert team in Banjar, the axe is also known by vivid names such as Gigi Petir or Untu Gledek, which can be interpreted as Teeth of Thunder. Just hearing those names, you can already sense the strong spiritual significance, right? Meanwhile, archaeologist Ada Bagus Putu Prajna Yogi openly stated that in all his years of research in Kalimantan, he had never encountered anything like it. However, the story doesn't end there. Experts emphasize that verifying the axe's origin is extremely important. It needs to be carefully examined in terms of how it was discovered, how it was preserved, and whether there is any possibility that it could be a forgery, because even a small mistake could cast doubt on its entire historical value. But if everything is confirmed to be authentic, this could become one of the rare pieces of evidence showing that ancient humans knew how to utilize metal from the cosmos at a very early stage. And Indonesia is not the only place where such discoveries have been made. In Poland, archaeologists have found bracelets and pins made from meteoritic iron in ancient cemeteries. Analysis revealed high levels of nickel, a key indicator of extraterrestrial metal. Researchers even discovered signs that ancient craftsmen intentionally mixed different types of iron to create patterns, a highly sophisticated technique that could be considered the earliest form of patterned metalworking. In Spain, when scientists reanalyzed the Villena treasure, a collection of 59 gold-plated artifacts, they also found 2 items containing meteoritic iron originating from a cosmic rock that fell to Earth about 1 million years ago. When you put all these discoveries together, they form a fascinating and thought-provoking picture. Ancient people may not have understood meteorites in the scientific way we do today, but clearly they recognized one thing: objects that fell from the sky were unlike anything found on Earth. And because of that, they transformed them into something extraordinary, a tool, a piece of jewelry, or even a symbol of power. Isn't that incredible? The mysterious painting. Inside the coffin of a 3,000-year-old Egyptian mummy. When we think of Egyptian mummies, most of us picture ancient coffins, layers of tightly wrapped linen, and secrets that have slept undisturbed for thousands of years. But what many people don't realize is that sometimes the greatest secrets aren't on the outside. They're hidden deep within, in places no one has ever looked for centuries. And the story you're about to hear takes us to one such discovery, a finding that may seem small at first, but left archaeologists completely stunned. During the conservation of an Egyptian mummy dating back nearly 3,000 years, scientists unexpectedly uncovered something never recorded before. The mummy, known as Satal Hoyuk, is believed to have been a priestess, or possibly even a princess, from Thebes, one of the most important religious centers of ancient Egypt. This artifact has been on display at the Perth Museum since 1936, after being donated by the Aloha Society of Natural Science and Archaeology. But for nearly a century, no one knew that a secret was still hidden inside the coffin. The reason researchers began intervening was because the mummy had started to deteriorate significantly. It had previously been disturbed by ancient tomb robbers, which damaged its structure. Preservation became necessary to prevent further decay. Then, during the careful conservation process, when experts decided to lift the mummy out of the coffin base, something that had never been done before, they discovered something completely unexpected. On the inside, and even on the underside of the coffin base, were ancient paintings. Not one, but 2 images. And remarkably, both depicted the same figure, the goddess Amentet, also known as Imentet, the deity associated with the afterlife in ancient Egyptian belief. Dr. Mark Hall, who was directly involved in the process, could not hide his surprise. He explained that there had never been a reason to lift the entire structure or separate the mummy from the coffin before, and because of that, no one had ever imagined that such images could exist beneath it. But that very moment led to an incredibly valuable discovery. Of the 2 paintings, the one inside the coffin base was better preserved. It depicts the goddess Imentet facing to the right, wearing her characteristic red dress. Her arms are slightly extended as she stands on a raised platform, a detail suggesting that this is not merely decorative, but may represent a divine statue or a figure of deep spiritual significance. Just think about it, a painting that remains silent for nearly 3,000 years, unseen, unknown, only to be revealed when modern humans accidentally touched the past. It sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? But what makes this discovery truly special is not just its unexpected nature, it's also its meaning. In ancient Egyptian culture, the goddess Imentet was believed to welcome the souls of the dead into the afterlife. So the presence of her image inside the coffin may not be a coincidence. It could serve as a kind of guide, a protective symbol for the journey after death. Dr. Hall also emphasized that their primary goal was to preserve the mummy and prevent further damage. After the work was completed, the mummy was carefully rewrapped and the coffin structure was reinforced to maintain its best possible condition. But perhaps the most valuable outcome of all was this discovery itself, a secret hidden for thousands of years, a painting never seen before, and a new story rewritten directly from the past. So what do you think? How many more secrets like this might still be hidden within artifacts we believe we already understand? Share your thoughts in the comments, because who knows? Sometimes the smallest overlooked details may be the very key to unlocking the greatest mysteries of human history. The fossil of a bizarre creature from a lost supercontinent. You know, throughout Earth's history, there have been creatures that once existed but were so obscure they were almost like ghosts in the imagination of scientists. No one knew exactly what they looked like, and no one could say for certain how they truly appeared. Everything was pieced together from a few scattered bones, like a puzzle that was never fully completed. And then, after decades of mystery, one such creature finally revealed itself. To better understand it, let's travel back in time to about 66 million years ago. At the end of the Cretaceous period, when dinosaurs still ruled the Earth, giant crocodiles roamed the swamps, and somewhere out there lived a small but incredibly strange creature. That creature is called Adelatherium hui. The name alone sounds unusual, doesn't it? But what makes it truly special isn't just the name. It belongs to a highly mysterious group known as Gondwanatheria, a group that paleontologists have spent years trying to understand, almost as if they were feeling their way in the dark. In the past, all we had were fragments, a few pieces of skull, parts of jawbones, found scattered across South America, Africa, India, and even Antarctica. From those incomplete pieces, scientists tried to imagine what the entire animal might have looked like. Some believed it resembled a sloth, others thought it might have had armor like a pangolin. But in the end, they were all just guesses. Until one discovery changed everything. A team of scientists, led by Dr. Simone Hoffman from the New York Institute of Technology, uncovered what could be described as a stone mummy, a nearly complete fossil preserved within a rock slab in Madagascar. And from that moment on, the ghost of history finally took on a real form. This creature was about the size of a large cat, weighing about 6.8 pounds. That may not sound extraordinary at first, but don't be fooled by its size, because what lies within its skeleton is what truly stuns scientists. Researchers have called it the strangest of the strange. The skeleton of Adelatherium hui does not follow the typical patterns of evolution. Its spine contains an unusually high number of vertebrae, so many that it's difficult to explain. Some of its leg bones are curved in ways that scientists cannot accurately reconstruct how it moved. In other words, they can see the structure, but they don't fully understand how it functioned. And its head is even more fascinating. Its face is covered with numerous tiny holes, pathways for nerves and blood vessels, forming an extremely sensitive snout, possibly covered with whiskers like those of modern animals. At this point, you might be wondering, so what does it most resemble? Well, the answer is, it doesn't resemble any living animal today. Part of the reason lies in the history of the place where it lived. Adelatherium hui was discovered in Madagascar, a land that was once part of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana, a massive landmass that existed before Earth split into the continents we know today. Around 88 million years ago, Madagascar broke away from Gondwana and became isolated. And it was this isolation that allowed life there to evolve along completely separate paths, unaffected by species elsewhere. As a result, creatures like Adelatherium hui emerged, unique, bizarre, and leaving behind no descendants. An animal that lived in an isolated world, evolved in its own way, and then vanished completely, leaving behind nothing but a fossilized skeleton tens of millions of years later. It sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But unfortunately, it's real. And it just goes to show that the history of life on Earth is far more complex than we imagine. It's anything but simple. 500-year-old mummies in Greenland reveal a shocking truth about death on the ice island. There's something quite strange that not many people notice. We often assume that people in the past, who lived close to nature, ate clean food, and weren't exposed to pollution, must have been healthier than we are today. But sometimes, stories from the past completely turn that idea upside down. A clear example comes from a remote and icy land, Greenland. Hundreds of years ago, it was home to Inuit hunters, people who lived entirely off nature, traveling across icy seas in small kayaks, hunting fish, birds, and seals to survive. Among them were 4 individuals, 2 men and 2 women, who were all very young, between 18 and 30 years old. They lived around the 1500s, in shelters built from stone and whale bones, facing the harsh cold every single day. Hearing that, you might think, that kind of life must make you incredibly healthy, right? Eating only natural foods. And in many ways, that's true. Their diet is considered one of the healthiest humans have ever had. Rich in protein from fish and marine animals, especially omega-3 fatty acids, which today are widely known to support heart health. And yet, they died very young. What's strange is that there were no signs of accidents, no evidence of attacks by wild animals, and no obvious external signs of disease. Their deaths remained a mystery for centuries. It wasn't until 1929, when these 4 bodies were discovered, that people realized the extreme cold of Greenland had naturally preserved them as mummies. But even then, the cause of death remained a major question for more than 90 years, until modern technology came into play. Scientists from Canada and the United States used CT scans and 3D reconstruction technology to look inside the bodies of these mummies. And what they found truly surprised everyone. All 4 had died from atherosclerosis. That might sound strange, right? Today, this condition is often associated with modern lifestyles, high-fat diets, lack of exercise, high cholesterol. But these 4 individuals lived the complete opposite way. They were physically active every day, ate natural foods, and consumed high levels of omega-3, something believed to help prevent atherosclerosis. So why did they still develop the disease? The answer lies in something most people tend to overlook. Not food, but air. In the freezing conditions of Greenland, they had to keep fires burning constantly for warmth and cooking. But their shelters were tightly sealed to retain heat, which meant smoke couldn't fully escape. Day after day, they inhaled smoke from their own fires, and over time, this created severe indoor air pollution. As modern research has shown, air pollution can lead to cardiovascular diseases, including atherosclerosis. In this case, those 4 young hunters became clear evidence of that fact, even though they lived 500 years ago. So in the end, the story of these 4 mummies is not just an archaeological discovery, it's a warning. Sometimes, danger doesn't come from the obvious. It comes from the things so familiar that we stop noticing them. So remember, anything around you could potentially affect your health. Stay aware, stay cautious, and never underestimate the risks that might seem invisible. The mummified miner of the Otakama Desert reveals a shocking truth. There are places on Earth so extreme that even time itself seems to stand still, and the Otakama Desert is one of them. It is so dry that life can barely exist. But ironically, it is that very dryness that can preserve things lost thousands of years ago. And in this case, the Otakama preserved a story for more than a millennium, a story about a man and the final moments of his life. The story began in the 1970s, just outside an ancient turquoise mine near the city of El Salvador in northern Chile, deep within the Otakama Desert. Researchers discovered a remarkable body. It wasn't just a skeleton, and it wasn't a decomposed corpse, it was a completely preserved natural mummy. There were no embalming rituals, no elaborate coffin, just sand, wind, and time. And yet, they had preserved the body in an almost unbelievable state. The man was buried with a few simple items, including a bow and arrows, suggesting he may have been a hunter or someone accustomed to surviving in harsh conditions. But as scientists examined the body more closely, they realized this man was not just a typical hunter, he was a miner, and his death was far from peaceful. Using radiocarbon dating, experts determined that he lived between the years 894 and 1016, about 1,100 years ago. At the time of his death, he was between 25 and 40 years old, an age of strength capable of enduring even the harshest working conditions. So what exactly happened to him? To answer that question, scientists used modern technologies such as CT scans and X-rays to read the remaining traces on his body, like decoding a story without words. And what they found was anything but pleasant. The upper spine showed multiple unhealed fractures. His ribs, shoulder blades, and collarbones were all broken. The entire upper back appeared to have been subjected to an extremely powerful force, strong enough to displace the vertebrae and crush the rib cage. In simple terms, he had been struck by something very heavy. But that wasn't all. Researchers also discovered a fracture near the lower part of the spine, indicating that the trauma was not limited to a single point. it had spread throughout the body. Injuries like these are typically associated with severe spinal cord damage, and in most cases, the victim would have had little to no chance of survival. So what could have caused such a devastating impact? The answer becomes clearer when considering the context. This man was working in a turquoise mine, at a time when mining relied entirely on basic tools like stone hammers, wooden shovels, and baskets. There were no machines, no protective equipment, and certainly no safety measures. Everything depended on human strength. And if a large rock suddenly collapsed, there was almost no way to escape. Interestingly, the man's skull, neck, and arms showed no signs of injury. This reveals an important detail. At the moment of the accident, he may have been bent over while working, or perhaps he even tried to shield his head with his arms in his final seconds. By now, you can probably feel how real this story is. This wasn't a mysterious legend or an unknown death. It was a workplace accident that happened more than 1,000 years ago. What makes this story even more remarkable is its historical context. Turquoise mining in the Otakama region existed for about 2,000 years. These precious stones were crafted into jewelry and traded across vast networks of pre-Columbian Inca societies. In other words, this miner wasn't just working to survive. He was part of an entire ancient economic system. But in the end, what he received was a death buried deep beneath the earth. And if not for the Otakama Desert, a place so dry it can seemingly freeze time, this story might have been lost forever. 12 3,400-year-old gold miner mummies buried like royalty in Sudan. For thousands of years, we've often assumed that ordinary laborers, those who dug the earth, carried stones, and worked in darkness, would never receive a proper burial after death, and would likely be forgotten altogether. After all, most people believe that only kings, rulers, or those with power and influence are remembered by history, right? But sometimes, history turns that idea completely upside down in the most unexpected ways. And a story from an island called Sai, a remote region in Sudan that was once under the control of ancient Egypt, is a perfect example. Here, archaeologists uncovered a secret that had been buried for more than 3,000 years. It wasn't a treasure of glittering gold. It wasn't the tomb of a pharaoh. It was a collective burial site containing 12 mummies. Yes, you heard that right. 12 individuals lying side by side, silent for 3,400 years. And what surprised scientists wasn't just the number, but who they were. They weren't nobles. They weren't royalty. They were simply gold miners of ancient Egypt. That might sound ordinary at first, but don't jump to conclusions, because what's truly unusual is how they were buried. Alongside the mummies, archaeologists discovered numerous valuable artifacts, traces of golden funerary masks, a gold ring, scarab amulets with spiritual significance, pottery fragments, ancient vessels, and even a finely carved ushabti figurine. You see, in ancient Egyptian culture, an ushabti wasn't just decoration. It was believed to serve as a servant in the afterlife, buried with the deceased to assist them beyond death. So this raises an important question. Why were these miners prepared for the afterlife with such care and honor? Could it be that they were more than just ordinary workers? According to researchers, these mummies date back to Egypt's New Kingdom, a time when gold mining played a crucial role. Gold was not just wealth, it was a symbol of power, deeply tied to religious rituals and the authority of the pharaoh. And to obtain that gold, people had to travel to remote places like Sai Island, working under harsh conditions and facing constant danger. Perhaps that is why they were considered important, and why they were given such respectful burials. But what makes this story even more thought-provoking is that they were buried together. Just imagine this. 12 individuals who may have lived, worked, and endured hardships side by side, and in the end, remained together beneath the earth. They were no longer just a group of workers. They were a community, a bonded group. To learn more, DNA samples from these mummies have been sent to the Max Planck Institute in Germany, where scientists hope to uncover their origins, relationships, and perhaps even the stories of their lives. Were they local inhabitants? Or were they brought from Egypt? Were they related by blood? All of these questions remain unanswered. But one thing is certain, this discovery has changed the way we view people of the past, because sometimes those who seem unknown or forgotten turn out to be the most important pieces in understanding an entire civilization. 2,000-year-old statue with eyes that look almost human. Hey, have you ever stood in front of an ancient statue and felt like it was looking straight at you? Not imagination, but a very real, slightly chilling feeling as if those eyes had a soul, emotions, and a story to tell from the past. That's exactly what archaeologists experienced during an excavation at an ancient site called Metropolis, located near the city of Izmir in Turkey. There, experts discovered the marble head of a statue dating back more than 2,000 years. At first, it might not sound unusual. Ancient statues aren't exactly rare, right? But what left everyone completely stunned was the statue's eyes. They weren't dull or lifeless. They were so vivid that, at a glance, many people thought they were looking at real human eyes. Just imagine, a statue buried underground for over 2 millennia, yet when brought to light, its gaze remains sharp and full of depth, as if it's still observing the world around it. That's not exactly a comfortable feeling, is it? According to experts, the statue dates back to the Hellenistic period and most likely represents the goddess Hestia, the deity associated with the sacred hearth and home in Greek mythology. This isn't a coincidence. Metropolis has long been known as the city of the mother goddess, a major cultural center that flourished more than 2,000 years ago. Now, back to the eyes, the feature that captured the attention of archaeologists. Typically, ancient statues are carved from a single block of stone, including the eyes. But in this case, ancient artisans did something entirely different. Instead of carving the pupils directly into the stone, they carefully sculpted the eye sockets and inserted colored stones to create a more lifelike gaze. In simple terms, they installed eyes into the statue. And it's precisely this technique that gives the statue a sense of life, a gaze that feels real. Something that even modern art can sometimes struggle to replicate. But the craftsmanship doesn't stop there. The head itself is exquisitely detailed. The hair is carved strand by strand with soft, realistic lines. Even more impressive, the head was not made from a single piece of stone, but from 2 separate sections joined together, showcasing the remarkable technical skill of ancient craftsmen. According to archaeologist Serdar Aybek from Doku's Eylül University, the size of the head suggests that it once belonged to a massive statue, one that may have stood prominently in an important structure within the city. Interestingly, the body of the statue may have been discovered earlier at a site known as the Buluterion, the former assembly hall of the ancient city, since the dimensions of the body and head appear to closely match. However, further research is still needed to confirm whether they truly belong to the same statue. If that connection is proven, we wouldn't just have a complete statue, we would gain a vivid piece of history, helping us better understand the art, culture, and even the ambitions of people who lived more than 2,000 years ago. 500-year sealed cave, containing artifacts that shocked the world. In 2023, Russian cave explorer Yekaterina Katia-Pavlova, along with local guide Adrian Beltran-Dimas, explored and mapped the Tlayococ cave system in Mexico, a place that no one had ventured deep into for centuries. And right there, during a moment of rest, they unexpectedly discovered a treasure of 14 ancient artifacts, at least 500 years old, opening a remarkable gateway into a mysterious civilization known as the Tlacotepehua. The artifacts found include a collection of meaningful and valuable items: 3 bracelets possibly made from shimmering mother-of-pearl shells, a fragment of a bracelet crafted from mollusk shell, a perforated seashell, along with various finely decorated ornaments. In addition, there were pieces of charred wood, intact stone discs, and fragments of those discs. Through careful analysis by experts, these artifacts have been dated to between approximately 950 and 1521, aligning with the period when the Tlacotepehua people lived in this region. What makes this discovery even more fascinating is that, in many pre-Hispanic cultures, caves were considered gateways to the underworld, places where deities resided and sacred power was believed to exist. For this reason, archaeologists believe that the Tlacotepehua used Tlayococ Cave as an important ceremonial site, where rituals were performed to seek protection and blessings from the gods. The fact that the cave remains sealed and preserved for more than 5 centuries, like a time capsule, allows us to glimpse the sense of reverence and respect this community held for the spiritual world and for nature itself. This discovery is not only a major step forward in archaeology, but also a new opportunity for scientists to better understand the Tlacotepehua civilization, a culture that remains largely unknown in history. These valuable artifacts provide not only clues about craftsmanship and belief systems, but also reveal aspects of daily life, cultural exchange, and the deep connection between the Tlacotepehuua people and their natural environment. The first steps into Tlacote Cave feel like a journey through time, opening a new and mysterious chapter in Mexican archaeology. This is not just about uncovering ancient objects, it is an encounter with a legendary past, where every bracelet and every piece of stone carries the story of people who once lived, worshipped, and hoped in a world long gone. This discovery also raises an intriguing question. How many more secrets are still waiting to be uncovered beneath the soil of Mexico, where history and legend intertwine? Tlacote Cave is not just an archaeological site, it is an invitation for researchers to continue exploring deeper, to illuminate what still lies hidden in the shadows of time. With each artifact uncovered, we move one step closer to reconstructing the vivid story of the Tlacotepehuua, a civilization that once existed, believed in the power of nature and the divine, and left a lasting imprint beneath the land of Mexico for future generations to remember. My friends, the archaeological discoveries we've just explored are only a small part of the countless mysteries around the world that remain unsolved. These findings don't just amaze us, they also ignite an endless curiosity about humanity's past. Every site, every artifact, carries its own unique story, waiting for us to uncover and understand. So what do you think about these mysteries? Could there still be lost civilizations that we haven't fully discovered yet? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to catch more fascinating videos from the Ancient History channel. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you again in the next adventure of discovery.